How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
this the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in the dystopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the dystopia. This is the final genocide. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the dystopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the dystopia. This is the final
What up, guys? Happy Wednesday. It's Wednesday, right? I feel like it's Thursday for some reason. Do you know why I feel like it's Thursday? Because I'm taking Friday off to go to Salem. So that's probably why I feel like it's Thursday. Because, like, my Thursday. Because I'm taking Friday off to go to Salem. Hey, welcome to the show. I apologize for being late. You know, it's been a really weird day for me. Can I talk to you guys about just some thoughts I'm having before we get into the content for today? Can I just do a little monologue? Can I do a monologue? Do you guys mind? I'm gonna do a monologue anyway because it's my stream. I'll do what I want. We are gonna be watching some good content. We're gonna be watching that Haymarket Books presentation that they just premiered this the other day, and basically it's a live discussion that they did about what they're going to do outside of elections, because as a reminder, the far left doesn't really believe that they're going to win via elections, and so they did a presentation about, like, okay, so we've got this election thing, we don't really think that's going to do anything, so what do we do about it, and yada 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 yada. And so that's what we're gonna listen to, and I think this is actually going to be a really good presentation. Mizakan watched like the first half hour of it. He's a really good judge of these things, and so he says it's really good. And so we're going to spend some time watching some leftist content today for a change. I think that's going to be great. Getting kind of sick of playing games with those contards. We are more advanced than them. Let them eat our dust. You know, it really is funny, though, isn't it, Milo? It's funny because they think they know everything. They really do. And, you know, it is so easy to see how much they don't know when you're on this side of things. It's so easy, and it's so easy to the point that it's downright infuriating. Because we've been watching this content for years. We know what the real left is saying. We know what the real left is doing. We know what they think. We know how they see the world. We know what they're going to do next. It is so easy to predict. And then you go over into the insanity of the conservative retard movement on Twitter, and it's just like completely unhinged from reality. Completely unhinged. And it's like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's sad in a lot of respects because a lot of those people have been lied to by people that they trust. But at some point, they have to take responsibility for their actions too, right? At some point, they're the ones choosing to listen to those people instead of seeking out what the truth is. All of us sought out what the truth was. Why can't they? If we can do it, why can't they? We're not special and unique snowflakes. We're just people like everyone else. So they can do everything that we can do. So I do appreciate the super chats. Nope, that's not at all what they're going to say. That's not at all what they're going to say. If you think that that's what they're going to say, you've been listening to too much conservative media. I'll tell you that. That's not at all. But you're here. Listen, you're here. And so if you stick around for the presentation part of this stream, you will see explicitly that's not actually what they're going to say. And here's your responsibility, all-seeing guy. When I show you explicitly that that's not what they're going to say, why don't you go out onto social media and to tell all the people who think that this is what they're going to say, why don't you go and tell them, that's not really what they're going to do. What they're going to do is actually significantly worse than that. Give that a try. Give that a try. See how that goes for you. That's been the last 3 years of my life. But before we get into that, I want to talk about some stuff. And really, I think the stuff that I want to talk about can be summed up in this tweet that I sent earlier. I'm no longer going to plead with adults to behave like adults rather than unhinged lunatics. I'm just going to block them and let them feed their outrage addiction off someone else. That's how I'm feeling at the moment. That's how I'm feeling at the moment. Do you know what I found out today? I found out today that I have been accused of sexually harassing Chris Burnett because I sent him DMs relevant to things he was tweeting that had nothing to do with sex. And I gotta say, this is not the first time I've been accused of sexually harassing someone that I didn't sexually harass. This is not the first time I've been accused of coming on to someone that I didn't come on to. This is not the first time I've been accused of trying to fuck someone that there is literally no evidence that I did anything. This is not the first time this has happened. But it is going to be the last fucking time. Because I'm done. I'm done. It's like, this is not the worst thing I've ever experienced, but it's kind of like there's a big pile of rocks that have been landing on me over the past several years, and it's just like that little pebble on top that is just like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm not doing it anymore. And the thing of it is the people who are accusing me of sexually harassing him and wanting to fuck him, they know that's not what happened. They know that do people have any idea how many DMs I send to people in a given week? Do people have any idea how many DMs get sent to me in a given week that look no fucking different than what I sent that asshole? But because he's being a fucking lunatic on the internet, now I'm guilty of sexually harassing him and wanting to fuck him? Okay. This is not a serious conversation. And the thing of it is that really, 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 really pisses me off. And I hesitate to even say this because I know exactly what's going to happen when I say this. I know exactly what's going to fucking happen. But I don't care anymore. I really don't give a fuck. The people that are accusing me of this are fucking groypers. They're fucking groypers. And it's kind of like, you know what? I adore Nick Fuentes. I adore him. I think he's smart. I think he's funny. I think that he has achieved Herculean feats. I think that what he's been able to build is incredible. I'm in awe of it. I think that what he has been able to withstand in terms of the amount of smear campaigns spread about him is unbelievable. I would not still be standing if I had to endure what Nick Fuentes has had to endure. But the irony of this whole situation is that I'm old enough to remember a time when a lot of people on the internet accuse Nick Fuentes of being gay because he slept in the same hotel room as Milo Yiannopoulos, which I don't think is proof of anything. I've shared hotel rooms with people on multiple occasions. I've shared hotel rooms with men. I've shared hotel rooms with women. And that doesn't mean you fuck them. It means you share a hotel room. It happens all the time. But a lot of people have accused Nick Fuentes of being gay because he shared a hotel room with Milo Yiannopoulos. And that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable when that happens. It's completely unacceptable. But then why are Nick Fuentes' most devoted fans doing exactly the same thing to me? Because I sent their 6'4" Aryan Chad a couple DMs that were relevant to things he was tweeting. Why are they doing exactly the same thing to me that Milo Yiannopoulos did to Nick Fuentes? When I have done nothing in the past year but support Nick Fuentes. Honestly, like, how much have I done? How many times have I put myself out on a fucking cliff to support Nick Fuentes in the last year? To stick up for Nick Fuentes, to defend Nick Fuentes, to stream Nick Fuentes on my fucking YouTube channel, which could have cost me my YouTube channel on more than one occasion. To tell all my audience over and over and over and over and over again, go watch his show, go watch his show, go watch his show, go watch his show, go watch his show. And I know I don't have the biggest audience in the world, believe me, I get it. I watch socialism on the internet. It's never going to be a mass audience, it's just not. But how many times do people have any fucking idea the amount of backlash that I've gotten for supporting Nick Fuentes? Do people have any fucking idea? I don't give a flying fuck if it's local to me or if the entire fucking internet knows about it. I don't care. That is not the point. I have lost so many contacts from supporting Nick Fuentes. I have lost supporters that have given me thousands of dollars over the last several years for supporting Nick Fuentes. I have lost some really long-term friendships for supporting Nick Fuentes. And Nick hasn't done anything to me. And I want to be very clear. This actually has nothing to do with Nick directly. Nick has done nothing to me. And I want nothing but success for him. But to really, to have it come from groypers, and one specific groyper that I'm not going to name, to accuse me of sexually harassing someone for sending fucking DMs that had nothing to do with sex, I'm like, I'm out. And that's not even the only drama and rumor that's been created by this. I am no longer going to be a fucking content punching bag for these people. I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. And you know, it really makes me sad in a number of respects because, like, there are so many people that are in that kind of space that I adore. I really do. And not because they're groypers and not because they're like on Nick's team. There are people creating awesome content in that space that I still want to be able to interact with, that I still want to be able to do content with, that I still want to be able to be friends with. And I hesitate to even name them right now, because if I name them, then they're going to get DMs and be, hey, why are you associating with that bitch? Because this is what happens. This is what happens. Yeah, like Siggy. I fucking adore Siggy. I think Siggy's awesome. And, you know, we're supposed to do this road trip thing, and I really do hope that still happens. I really, really do. I mean, who knows, I guess, but I've had a lot of conversations with him. He's such a creative person, and, like, Siggy is one of those people that, like, I feel like he understands the way I see the world better than a lot of people that I've talked to in recent years, because he is an artist. He's very creative, and he sees the world very differently too. And I love what he's doing, and I love his show, and I think it's so good, and I think it's so entertaining, and that has nothing to do with him being, you know, associated with Nick or something. He doesn't even have a Groper account. Like, and he is, and he loves Nick, and he's loved Nick for like a long time, but like, it has nothing to do with that. I love what Dalton's doing. I fucking love what Dalton's doing. I think that Dalton, if you guys haven't listened to No Holds Barred, Dalton is doing Howard Stern back when Howard Stern was actually good. Because people might not remember this, but I'm a woman of a certain age. I actually do remember this. There was a time when Howard Stern was actually good. There was a time when Howard Stern was like cutting edge. He was like very edgy. He was very controversial. You never knew what he was going to say. It was like always out there. And it's like Dalton is trying to do that now, and he's so good at it. He's so good. Even Paul Allen. I mean, and Paul Allen and I may have gotten off to like a little bit of a rocky start. That's, you know, fine. But like what he's doing, I've listened to his show more than he probably understands. Now, sadly, Dalton and Paul Allen stream at the same time I do for their live show. But like, oftentimes I'll catch up on their stuff, and like, it's good. It's just good. It's just good content. It's edgy, and it's interesting, and you don't know what they're going to say. And it's like, even someone like Beardson, I've actually grown an affinity for Beardson. I really have. I think Catholicism has done well for Beardson. I think that there's something just really adorable about him, to be honest. And I've grown to actually like him and appreciate him. And there are probably like a million other people that I can that I can name in this space that I've come into contact with, and like, I think that I'm okay with, and I think I'm cool with. But it's also like, another part of this that just kind of sucks is, it's like, you know what? It's not that Groypers operate like a hive mind, because they don't. They really don't. People can call them a cult all they want, but they really don't. But some of them do. And I think part of like my reasoning behind this is like, what this situation has shown to me clearly is that for some people, nothing I say matters. Nothing I do matters. So I am not in control of this situation at all in any way. Nothing I say matters. Nothing I do matters. Because the goal for these people will be to always and forever demonize me, no matter what I say, and no matter what I do, and no matter how unhinged from reality it is. And it's just, again, it's just really disappointing to me, because I legitimately think what Nick Fuentes is doing is awesome, and I don't want to be anything but supportive of him, but like, given the events of the past kind of like 48 hours, I just don't know. I'm not saying I'm not going to support him, but I don't know how I can. I don't know how I can. I don't know how I can look myself in the mirror and respect myself by continuing to put myself in a position where I'm just going to get shit on and used as a punching bag even by a really, really, really small minority, but that small minority has a fucking large mouth. And it's like, why would I do that? Why would I do that? You know, for the last year, people... Raymond, you just got banned, bro. Like, I don't want your opinion right now. Actually, you know what? No, I'm gonna take the ban back, but you're not... I don't want it, Raymond. I don't want your fucking opinion. I don't want your fucking opinion. I'm gonna be very honest. I don't want your fucking opinion. Okay, well, you want to leave? Okay, banned again. Like, I don't want... Like, I'm gonna be very, very clear. If anyone ever comes in my chat and says, Carlin, why don't you just shut up about this and get to the content? Go fuck yourself. Go get the content somewhere else. This is my fucking stream. This is my fucking life. You don't get to tell me how to run my stream. You don't get to tell me how to run my content. If you just want to get right to the content, go to Haymarket Books' YouTube channel and watch it on your damn own. You know, I've talked about this a lot over the last, like, several weeks. Like, there is an actual opportunity for... Okay, Raymond, you're getting put in a timeout again, bro. Like, stop fucking talking. I've talked about this a lot over the past several weeks. I really do think that there is an opportunity right now to get the content that I've been doing for years out there. And you know what? This is another factor in this whole thing. I have worked for years to build what I... You know what? This always goes back to something that Nick says on his show. And he's right about this. He says, we need to take our own side. We need to take our own side. Yeah. I need to take my own side. If I don't take my own side, then who's gonna take it for me? I have spent years in this space taking the side of other people before I took my own side. I spent all of 2020 taking the side of other people. When I basically gave up my life to tour around the country, to do walkaway rallies for 6 fucking months that didn't end up amounting to anything, to try to get Democrats to leave the Democratic Party and vote for Trump. I put so much of myself on the back burner. I put so many things that I had going on the back burner to be able to do that. And I never got a thank you for it. And it was never appreciated. And in the end, Brandon Strzok just stabbed me in the back anyway, without even thinking about it. In 2021 and 2022, I took the side of the Mises Caucus and the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire and the National Libertarian Party before myself. Again. Because I had my own content that I was doing. But I put a lot of my stuff on hold to be able to support the Mises Caucus takeover of the Libertarian Party, to be able to be actively involved in all of the and there was a lot. Like, people don't know. There was a lot that went into that. I gave up 2 fucking years of my life. I was a fake candidate for governor for the LPNH. It wasn't even a real candidacy. Like, people still give me shit for that all the time. Like, you didn't get any votes. I wasn't a real fucking candidate. I was a paper candidate. It wasn't real. But even that thing that wasn't real, that was never supposed to be real, took over my fucking life. For 2 years, I put them before I put myself. And they took and they took, and they took, and they took, and they took, and they took. And in the end, the Mises Caucus takeover has completely failed. The Mises Caucus has completely failed. They're all fucking Trump voters now. It was never real to begin with. The LPNH is no longer even a political party, really. I mean, it is on paper, but it's not actually even doing anything. It's just a Twitter account. It does nothing in New Hampshire. It's actually destroyed all of its credibility in New Hampshire based on the way the people running it are acting. The National Libertarian Party is about to go bankrupt. The chair of the fucking Libertarian Party should Where did my camera go? What happened to my camera? Start camera. What happened? My camera knew I was ranting and it was like, bitch. Bitch. I'm back. So I put them before me for 2 years. And then at the end of 2022, after I had been raked over the fucking coals, after I had been a fucking punching bag for a year of my life, after I had been dragged through the mud, after I had been stabbed in the back by people who called themselves my friend to my face, I finally said, enough is enough. And I pulled myself out of all of it. I was like, I'm not fucking doing it anymore. And that's when I dove into doing my Substack and my independent journalism. And that is when my content started really taking off. And that's when my Substack started really taking off. And that's when we started being able to, we were doing deep dives into the left for a long ass time before that, but that's when our deep dives into the left really started taking off. That's when I started going undercover at socialist events. That's when I started getting really good at creating this content and getting really good at explaining it and being able to teach so many people what the actual left is doing. Was when at the end of 22, I finally took my own fucking side for once. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put myself and what I want to do above everyone else, and they can all go fuck themselves, and no one else gets a piece of me any fucking more. And I put myself in this little silo, and I blocked everything else out, and I did what I wanted to do. And that was one of the most successful growth periods that I've had in the last 4. And listen, I grew a lot in 2020, but I don't even count that because a lot of that was, a lot of that growth was built off a person that I no longer am. And it was built off content that I no longer do. And the content I do today is so much better. It might not get the views that it did back then because the content I was doing back then was garbage content for stupid people. Because I was still growing and evolving and I was still figuring it out. And the content I do today is smart content for smart people. Sadly, there aren't that many smart people on the internet. Not as many as there are stupid people. But then at some point, I got pulled into this, like, Groyper thing. And again, I want to be very, very clear about this. I love Nick. I will continue to cheer Nick on. I will continue to really pray for his success. But how I feel right now is exactly the same way that I felt like when I was at the very tail end of being involved with the Libertarian Party. That's how I feel now. In regards to, again, not even the majority of the Groypers, but a very, very small minority with a very loud fucking mouth. And maybe it's that I've been through this several times over. And maybe it's just that my patience has run really, really thin. But it is disgusting to me to know that there are people out there that are Nick's supporters that have no appreciation at all for the amount of sacrifices that I've made to publicly support Nick, and that honest to God are accusing me of sexual fucking harassment because I sent DMs that had nothing to do with sex to a person on the internet that's their 6'4" Aryan Chad. And by the way, they are fucking retarded if they think that 6'4" Aryan Chad respects Nick at all. I'm sorry. That is retarded. Men like him always look down on people like Nick because they underestimate them. Now, I have no problem believing that Chris Burnett is going to use Nick for all the things that he can get from him. I have no problem thinking that Chris Burnett is going to use the Groypers for all the things that he can get from them. And it is completely and totally predictable that the Groypers would be like, oh my god, bowing down to the 6'4" Aryan Chat. It's completely and totally fucking predictable. But you know what? I don't have to involve myself in any of this bullshit anymore. I really don't. And so I don't know exactly where that leaves me other than to say that I'm going to be like pulling myself out of a lot of things related to that space. I just am. Like last night, I left a lot of the groups I was in regarding it. I've already been blocking people on Twitter all day. And I got to say, and again, here is my standard for whether or not I'm going to continue to interact with people on Twitter or any of these things. If you are a fully formed adult, and yes, 20-something men are fully formed adults. These are young men that claim to want to be put in charge of running things. You are a fully formed adult if you want to be put in charge of running things, okay? If I have to beg and plead with you to stop behaving like an unhinged lunatic, that's just not going to happen anymore. It's just not. I'm done. I'm out. And I cannot have this in my space anymore. And if that means that they get really pissed at me when I am being very, very specific about my complaints and grievances, and they take this entire thing and they pull it out of context and they say this and that and the other, and Brittany and Mio do entire streams. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Because for once, I'm going to go back to where I was before fucking October 7th, and I'm going to take my own fucking side, and I'm just not going to participate in it anymore. And people can have all the feelings they want about it. I don't really care. I have put up with enough. I have put up with enough. And I cannot take anyone seriously that thinks that a couple DMs that are highly relevant to something that someone on the internet was tweeting is just a bridge too far and it's sexual harassment. Oh my god, Carl is trying to sleep. Ah! Do you know how fucking insane that is? All because you're fucking bored on the internet and you want content and drama, and you are again creating a fucking problem for me that I don't fucking need. I have my own audience. I have my own community. I have never built anything that I have on the backs of Nick's community. If anything, my community has stayed pretty fucking separate. It's not that Groypers don't sometimes come over here, and of course they're always welcome. They really are. Anyone is welcome to come to my community and learn. But I'm not going to be treated like that. And this is not teasing. This is not gentle teasing. This is not roughhousing. This is the type of bullshit that once this bullshit starts to happen, I say, nah. Nah. I'm out. And again, and I have to keep repeating this because I know exactly how this is going to get twisted. This has nothing to do with Nick. Has nothing to do with him at all. And I really, really, really wish that the people who are doing this weren't putting me in a position where I feel like I need to extricate myself from it. in order to maintain my peace of mind. I put up with too much. And that's not even counting the content that I do, which is also a lot and also overwhelming. And I've never asked for anything in return other than don't make my life more difficult. Don't spread smear campaigns about me on the internet, because you know what? You would have a fit. If anyone did to Nick what Nick's fans, or I should say, again, a couple of them, not even a small, like a couple of them with a really loud fucking mouth. If anyone did to Nick what they are doing to me, they would be having a fucking hissy fit. They would be losing their fucking minds. If it's unacceptable to be done to Nick, it's unacceptable to be done to anyone. And I wouldn't hold anyone to a different standard, honestly. It's fucking unacceptable. And I didn't do anything to deserve it. And just because you're bored on the internet doesn't mean you get to fuck with my life and fuck with my work and fuck with something that I have been building for years separately from you. I'm taking my own fucking side, and that's just going to be the way it is. And people can have all the feelings they want about it. I don't really care. That's all I have to say. And now we're going to get to work because we have stuff to do, guys. Today on the channel, we are watching this presentation called Beyond the Ballot, The Left in a Time of Polycrisis. What this presentation is going to be about, this is sponsored by Socialist book publisher Haymarket Books. It seems like they're also doing a partnership with Hammer and Hope. Hammer as in hammer and sickle. It's got Naomi Klein, which is one of the queen bees of the socialist left. She is one of their goddesses. I don't know these other people, but we're going to meet them in the presentation, and they're going to be talking about how the far left wins separately from elections. Because as we know, the real far left doesn't actually believe they're going to win via elections. The real far left are not Democrats. They're not progressives. They're not even democratic socialists. The real far left, actually strike that. Naomi Klein, I do believe, is in the DSA. But she's more far left than the DSA, but I'm going to be intellectually honest. I do believe that Naomi Klein is in the DSA, but on the whole, the real far left doesn't believe they're going to win via elections. They believe they're going to win via other means. And so that's what this presentation is going to be about. It's going to be about what do we do beyond the ballot box. This presentation was given just the other day, October 19th, but it was streamed, I think, yesterday on YouTube by Haymarket Books. And we're going to watch it and we're going to see what they had to say. As a reminder, guys, if you want to support the work I'm doing, head over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. This is my primary content hub on the internet. And one of the things you guys could do to really help me out is go to the Unwoke Roundup email. This is a newsletter that I send out every Sunday or Monday, depending on when I get it done. And what I would love everyone to do is go and join my Telegram channel. And that is in the email. I'm also going to put the link in the chat. Telegram is a way that you can keep up with me and get notifications for when I go live and stuff like that, because it's really like 50-50 about whether or not YouTube is actually going to send out a notification for my stream. So that so you can join my Telegram channel. Raymond, how many times have I said I don't want your opinion on this, bro? Like, you keep putting your opinion and it keeps just pissing me off. So please stop. Please. But if you join my Telegram channel, you're going to be able to get notifications when I go live. And that makes sure you guys can come for the stream. And if I happen to be late, of course, I am never late. But if I happen to not start directly at 5 p.m., then you'll get a notification telling you that as well. Nick, thank you. Do what you need to do and put yourself first. Yeah, that's exactly what is going to happen. Say that. Oh, yes, guys, the presentation was just the other day. Another thing you can do if you want to support the work I'm doing is to head over to the Unwoke Art Store, which is my merchandise store, and check this out. Brown Barbaloot picked up a yard sign. Check it out. Has anyone else in the chat gotten the yard sign? If you guys get the yard sign or any other merch from my store, please take a picture of it. Look at the yard sign. It's not in the yard yet. It's going to the yard at some point when they get around to it. But you can pick up the yard sign in the Unwoke art store. It's right on the homepage right there. And this, of course, does all go to support the work I'm doing. And, of course, you can still get the limited edition Halloween merch collection. We've got 4 different designs on t-shirts, on sweatshirts, on pint glasses, on mugs, on stickers. These are only available for how much longer? Like another week. And by the way, I'm pretty sure if you get if you get some of this merch now, I'm pretty sure it will get to you in time for Halloween. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on that. We're starting to cut it a little close. It really depends on where you live, I guess. But I'm pretty sure it still will get to you in time for Halloween if you order it now. But it's going to be leaving the store at the end of the month. So you've only got about another week to be able to get your orders in. And then we're going to do a whole other collection coming up in November. I was working last night on a, okay, no one tell Jennifer. No one tell Jennifer. I'm working on a design for the merch store of a melting clock like Salvador Dali. I don't know if anyone knows Salvador Dali's melting clocks, but it's kind of like one of his iconic things is like a melting clock. And I'm working on a melting clock design that says time is not real, just for Jennifer. Don't tell her. Don't tell her. It's going to be a surprise for Jennifer. If you don't know the joke, you don't know the joke. But like, Jennifer hates it when I try to tell her there is no time. Time is not a real thing. Everything that has ever happened or will ever happen is happening right now. So we're if you get the joke, you get the joke. Anyway, guys, let's get into the show. Let's actually do our job. I am trolling my own audience with merch now. I am trolling my own supporters. I am trolling my own volunteers with their own special edition merch. Anyway, guys, let's go. Please make sure you mount the like button for me. Please make sure you have subscribed to the channel if you are not already. I put a picture on X tagged Unwoke Art. I put a sticker in my car window. Yeah! Oh, take a look at that, Janet. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let me know if you have questions in the chat, guys, as we're making our way through this. And by the way, if this is your first time watching Socialism with me, or if you're relatively new to watching Socialism with me, I just want to remind you, please ask questions if you don't understand something. We will explain it to you. Socialists do speak, it sounds like they speak English, but it's not really English. It's a different language called Socialist. So sometimes it can be hard to follow for people if they haven't listened to a lot of socialism before. But luckily, I've listened to socialism almost every day of my life for 3 years. A lot of people in my chat have as well. We know how to speak it fluently, so if you ask questions, we can help you out. Please refrain from debunking them. Every ounce of energy that you spend debunking them is an ounce of energy that you do not spend listening to them. So we're not going to do that anymore, okay? No debunking on this channel. Just like you gotta get over that. And because remember, this is about understanding the world from their perspective. It's about understanding what they think. And if you just spend all your time trying to debunk them, then you're not going to be able to get yourself into a place of understanding them. Just because you understand them doesn't mean you agree with them, okay? So let's get this party started.
All right. Welcome, good people, to Beyond the Ballot, the left in a time of polycrisis. I'm so excited that we're here together. We're going to have a moment to think together and kind of, figure out some stuff about how we're going to move forward. There are a few things I want to take care of right off the bat. First of all, I want to thank some folks. Give a big shout out to Hammer and Hope. Come on, y'all. Yeah. We got a real, radical magazine journal, man. Got to show some love for that. By the way, we're going to have there's a Hammer and Hope, there's a Haymarket table in the back, and there's also a Debt Collective table in the back. So make sure y'all, And we're going to have, over there, and we'll have there's some signed books. So, we want to show that some love. Thank you to Haymarket Books, by the way. Come on. Yeah. Thank you to the Margaret Casey Foundation. Yeah. West 83rd for hosting us. And we also want to give some love to our ASL team, Kanara Price and Patrice Harrington. Now, one other piece of exciting news I have to share is that there's going to be a new issue of Hammer and Hope. Is going to be live on October 25th. So I know everybody's going to be clicking in, tuning in, downloading that. It's going to take a critical look at the U.S. election, uplifts important organizing campaigns across the U.S. and Latin America, and continues our commitment to covering Palestine.
This is, thank you for the question, Farm Sim Daddy. How many of them understand that it is wrong but go along with it anyway? None. None. These are true believers. None of them are just going along with it to go along. And by the way, they all know what the goal is. This is not one of those things where people are ignorant of what's going on. That is a conservative bullshit propaganda talking point. It's not real. They all believe in this. They all run their lives around this. They dedicate everything they do to this. This is who they are.
New material is going to be posted into early November. So it's coming. It's going to be live in October 25th, but we're going to kind of keep going right up, through the election. So, you know what I mean? Look out for that as well. All right. And with that, I think we're going to get started. One last piece of business I just want to announce is we're going to talk for a while about some things, and then towards the end, we are going to have a Q&A, but you'll see folks are distributing cards, and they're going to distribute some cards out so you can write your questions down, and we'll take a look at those and have some questions toward the end. So that's how things are going to roll. Next, let me introduce our guests. I mean, I think, we kind of know who's in the building, but out of respect, Naomi Klein is an award-winning journalist and New York Times best-selling author. She's a columnist with The Guardian. In 2018, she was named the inaugural Gloria Steinem Endowed Chair of Rutgers University, where we got to hang out.
She's at Rutgers.
And is now honorary professor.
Guys, who are the leaders on the left? It all starts with the letter A. What are the three things that all start with the letter A that are the leaders of the left? Pop quiz. Does anyone know? 3 words all start with the letter A. Leaders of the left. Who are they? Academics. Who else? Academics is correct. 2 more. Activists, correct. Academics, activists, authors. Academics, activists, and authors. Those are the leaders of the left. The left does not operate as a hierarchy in which there's one leader at the top and then all these people do their bidding. The left has a broad array of people that are coordinating the messaging and coordinating the strategy across a broad array of decentralized cells, we'll call them. They don't all operate like cells, but that's just what we're going to call them. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of small socialist, communist, Marxist groups all over the country. And they're loosely affiliated with each other in that they all have the same goal, which is to overthrow capitalism. They all kind of know about each other because it's a relatively small world, but at the same time, it's not a small world. It's a small world in the same way that like conservative politics is a small world. Like people know about each other and they might loosely have the same goals. And sometimes they work together and sometimes they bicker and sometimes they shit talk each other on the internet. They do shit talk each other on the internet, which is kind of funny when it happens. But you have thousands of these things all over the country. How are all of these little groups working towards the same goal? Because the leaders, the people doing the organizing, who are not leaders in terms of like, they're not generals giving orders. The leaders are the ones that are controlling the flow of information. They're the ones controlling the information that gets trickled down into all of the other groups. The people doing that are the authors, the people writing the books that they all read, the academics, the people teaching in the universities. Oftentimes those people are also authors as well, but they're also not only doing that, they're also teaching young minds. They're teaching the next generation of activists in colleges and stuff like that. And then you have the activists, the people who are actually out there organizing, doing just the boring legwork of the day-to-day. And those are the people that are coordinating the messaging that then the other kind of like decentralized units interact with that messaging, and that's how they all basically kind of move in the same way. It's not that they're all working together. It's not as though there's a leader on high that's saying all these things. It's not even that they agree with each other all the time, but they do have like just a really broad array of people that are pushing information out there. That information goes into all of the other like people that are paying attention to this space, and that's how they all know what to say and what to do and why they all act the same. Does everyone understand that? Does everyone get how this works? And the thing of it is too, because there's such a broad array of people at the top, if one of those people becomes a problem, what happens? They get plucked out of that position, they get tossed away like a broken part in a machine, and someone else gets lifted up and put in that position. Every single person is replaceable. Every single person is a cog in a machine. Even the really famous ones like Naomi Klein. Naomi Klein is one of the queen bee author. She's all three. She's author, academic, and activist. She's one of their darlings. Okay? But if Naomi Klein went off the reservation and Naomi Klein started veering too far outside of the left's version of the Overton window, they'd be like, bing, poof, and they replace her with someone else. And they would have no problem with doing it. Does everyone understand? Not just the same tree, the same forest. That's a really good way to look at it.
Of media and climate at Rutgers. At UBC, yeah. In September 21st, she joined the University of British Columbia as UBC Professor of Climate Justice, tenured professor, co-director of the Senior Center for Climate Justice. Her newest book is the New York Times bestseller, Doppelganger. Have y'all read that? Woo! Oh my God, mind-boggling. A Trip into the Mirror World, just published in paperback. The paperback is out.
So, Doppelganger, this is something that's important to understand. People, like I talk all the time about socialist book publishers. Haymarket Books is a socialist book publisher. They publish exclusively publish exclusively socialist books. Haymarket Books are the people that literally put on the socialism conference, the one that I went undercover at in 2023. People think that when I'm talking about these socialist book publishers, these are just little rinky-dink operations, and they don't really do much, and we don't even know of them. We've never heard of them, Carlin, so do they really have any impact? Naomi Klein published Doppelganger, which is her latest book. It's about how she's a doppelganger with, who is that other Naomi? Naomi, the crazy woman with the hair that's like the conservative, like anti-vaxxer lady. Is it Naomi Wolf? Is that her name? I think that's her name. Anyway, so her book is about like how she has like this political doppelganger, Naomi Wolf, that they always confuse her and Naomi Wolf apparently. And so based on that, she like took a jump into conservative politics and all this stuff. And it's actually like it's kind of an interesting book, to be honest. But my point is this: it's a New York Times bestseller. Haymarket Books is not a rinky-dink operation. She published through the Socialist book publisher and got put on the New York Times bestseller list. This is not an insignificant thing, and she's not the only one that does this.
Out now. Astra Taylor is a writer, filmmaker, and political organizer.
Oh, she's Haymarket.
Her books include the American Book Award
is.
winner, The People's Platform, Taking Back Power and Culture in the Digital Age, still so relevant, Remake the World, Essays, Reflections, Rebellions, The Age of Insecurity, Coming Together as Things Fall Apart, and with Leah Hunt Hendricks, Solidarity, that's the new John, the past, present, and future of a world-changing idea. She's a co-founder of the Debt Collective. All right, give it up for Astra. Keean-Gyamata Taylor is the author of From Black Lives Matter to Black Liberation. You just got to give a shout out just for that book alone. Each of these books. and How We Get Free. Her book, Race for Profit, How Banks in the Real Estate Industry Undermine Black Home Ownership, was a semi-finalist for the National Book Award and a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in History. She co-edited with Robin D.G. Kelly and Colin Kaepernick, Our History Has Always Been Contraband.
The Pulitzer
Taylor is a contributing
fucking
writer
prize.
at The New Yorker and is Leon Forrest Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University. All right, give it up for Kianga. My name is Chinjarai Kumanika, and I'm a podcaster. I teach journalism and critical media studies at New York University. I am a co-host of Empire City.
NYU.
That's an untold
Critical
story,
Media
origin story
Studies.
of the NYPD. Y'all should check that out.
So we've got Rutgers, we've got NYU, we've got Princeton. I didn't catch where she's from, but these are professors at major universities.
And I'm very honored to be here. Now let's get down to business. The title of our program reflects the understanding that as we build our movements, we have to set our horizons further than elections, right? And yet, it's clear that whatever is going to happen, the conditions are going to be shaped by this extremely contentious election. And so I want to start there for a minute. Both polling and anecdotal observations indicate that masses of people are really disappointed with these choices, right? I mean, on one hand, you have a straight up white supremacist. Even military leaders are saying this person is an outright fascist. But on the other hand, you have the other candidate, Harris, who's promising to maintain a lethal military and praises Dick Cheney for his service to the nation.
Oh, you're telling me that socialists don't support Kamala Harris? I am shocked that socialists don't support Kamala Harris. This is shocking information, considering that conservatives keep calling Kamala Harris a literal communist and Marxist. It is shocking that socialists don't support Kamala Harris. However, did we overlook this? How could we have known that this was the case?
These seem to be the options on the table. And of course, this is a context for, talking about building alternative parties. But what are you all seeing in terms of this election? Like, what are the most important things to pay attention to? What are you seeing about how people are feeling?
I'm making faces again. I'll start. I think there's a lot of things. I go back to the summer or the spring when there was something deeply demoralizing about what seemed like the slow death march of the cadaver in chief, Joe Biden.
The cadaver in chief.
The only alternative to Trump. I mean, it just felt like, wow, this is just gonna happen. And so, I think there was an initial burst of excitement around Harris by the simple virtue that she was alive, that she was breathing, that it seemed that she could actually respond.
That was the bar.
The bar is so low. But I think, one of the big questions over the last several weeks is what has happened to the sugar high that sort of captivated pundits and election observers, and really, a portion of the electorate over the final months of the summer. And I think that the decision of the Democratic Party consultants, of Kamala Harris, to run the campaign in such a way to appeal to the centrist voter has really deflated, I think, a lot of that enthusiasm. The quips about, she's a gun owner and she'll shoot somebody who comes into her house too, and the whole thing about the lethal military and just all this kind of pandering to the right.
We don't do this shit here. I don't give a flying fuck what you think about her weight. I don't give a flying fuck what you think about her hair color. I don't give a flying fuck. It has no relevance at all. This is low IQ internet bullshit, and I'm not going to tolerate it here. I have to do you know how many people I hear this shit from every single fucking day? Do you know how many people are out there smearing me right now? Because they just want to be like, she's fat, she's ugly, she's dumb, she's saying this, she's saying that, she's sexually harassing. Fuck you. Be fucking better than this. These people are actively trying to destroy our world, and the best you retards have is, she's fat, she's ugly, she's fat, she's ugly. Are you fucking retarded? Are you a fucking 5-year-old? We don't do this shit here. We will never do this shit here. I am holding my audience to a much higher bar than the fucking morons on Twitter can ever dare dream achieve. These people are winning, and the fucking retards of the internet think that they're gonna beat them with, she's fat, she's ugly, she's fat, she's ugly. You really think that's gonna beat the left? Unbelievable.
I think has been somewhat demoralizing for people who were excited about an actual alternative to Trump. Now, clearly, Harris is not running in the same way that Trump is, and doesn't represent the kind of same frontal assault on people that Trump does. But just in terms of how people are receiving this, and why there is to some extent an enthusiasm.
I'm sorry, I swear to God, this is the last thing I'll say about this. But seriously, I want everyone to imagine for a second, you're in a college class. You're in a classroom. You're in a class that you have signed up for. I am the teacher in the class, and I am sitting there trying to teach you, here are the people that are trying to destroy our country, and we need to learn about what those people are saying and doing in order to prevent them from destroying the country. Is everyone on board? That's what we're doing here. We're trying to figure out who these people are and how they're destroying our country and how they took over every institution and how they're winning, so that we can maybe figure out a way to, I don't know, get ahead of them and actually stop them from destroying the country. That's what we're doing here. That is the goal of the class. It's the class you signed up for. Now imagine that everyone is sitting in this class, and I'm at the head of the class, and I'm teaching the class, and someone comes in, and we're trying to learn about what these people are trying to do to take over the country separate from elections, which normal people might think is actually a pretty important thing. And then someone in the middle of the class gets up and goes, she's fat and ugly. Can you imagine that happening in real life? Can anyone imagine that happening in real life? Do you know how retarded that is? That person would get kicked out of the class immediately and told, don't come back until you take this seriously. You signed up to be here, and the best you're coming with is she's fat and ugly? Get the fuck out.
Enthusiasm gap surrounding her campaign. I think that we have to look at the decision to run the race in this way, especially coming 4 years after the Democratic Party was sort of very open and conscious about aligning itself with the Black Lives Matter movement in a way to win the race. We can talk about the reasons for that, but there's such a sharp contrast that I think it has been politically deflating for some.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is true. One of the things that's really stark to me is that we have these two very different relationships to reality, represented by the two campaigns, that are different kinds of flight into different kinds of fantasy. I was really struck by that during the conventions, where the Trump Vance convention was just amped up, sort of like the defiantly fake, right? Of reality television, of beauty pageants, of pro wrestling, just like that we know it's fake, and that is a big part of the entertainment universe, right? Of just relishing the show of fakeness, right? We all are in on it. We know it's not real, but we're really enjoying turning it up to 11. And so it was all of that, and Stadium Rock, and but then the DNC and the Harris campaign in general is like prestige TV, right? And it's kind of like
prestige TV.
Sort of reminds you of Ted Lasso, or like and Harris is sort of playing like the lovable tough cop, or police chief on like every procedural that you've ever seen, right? And it's not like one is real and
is it a so Naomi Klein, socialist, just said Kamala Harris is putting herself out there like she's just any tough cop. She's playing the role of the tough cop. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for this audience? Is Naomi Klein giving Kamala Harris, no, it's not word salad, you just don't understand it. If you have questions about what they're saying, ask the questions, but none of that was word salad, you just don't understand it. You obviously are learning nothing. You're learning nothing. Is it a good thing or a bad thing that Naomi Klein just said Kamala Harris is playing the role of a tough cop? That's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. Socialists hate the police. They don't like the cops. Bad, bad. Cops are bad. They don't like Kamala Harris. That's bad. That's bad. Exactly. Kamala Harris was a cop. This is what they call her all the time. That's a bad thing. So I just want people to know who, again, might be new to this. Exactly. Bad. Socialists hate the cops. What Naomi Klein just said was not a compliment. That was actually a jab. And if people don't understand the language of socialists, they might not understand that.
And what is fake? It's they really do represent two different streams of sort of big entertainment in this country, and really the world. I mean, that said, I would be careful not to just feel smug of sort of like we of the left are the people in reality with real plans about how we're going to change things.
True, you're not.
I think it's a very tough moment to really hold reality, and we have our own versions on the left of fantasy of imagining how we're going to change things with a big enough rally or the revolutionary moment just around the corner. There's different sort of narrative structures that we tend to ascribe to. So I do want to be careful, but that's what strikes me most is just the kind of the slickness of the artifice. And I think they made a really kind of strange decision just from an affect perspective to go with joy in a moment like in a genocide, and also keep the genocide going.
No. I know you're new, Jaxie, but it's really not that. It's really not. That is a conservative talking point, and we have to be really careful that we're not confusing conservative talking points with reality. This is their value system, just like your value system is your value system. Okay? It's not like a religion. This is a conservative bullshit talking point. And if you stick around, and I really hope you do, because I know you just found my channel not too long ago, you're going to see that over the course of like a couple streams. They have a completely different value set than you do. And it's important to, people might think this is a nitpicky point, but So many people have been misinformed about what the left is by conservative bullshitters that we have to be really careful to be very, very precise in our language to make sure that we know what we're talking about. We need to make sure we're hinging into reality and not buying into propaganda. Hey, Tolkien fan, I do appreciate the super sticker. Thank you.
You know, as climate disasters wash away communities, I'm not saying there's no role for joy, but you kind of have to earn your joy a little bit. You know, I mean, it has to be linked with some kind, it has to be tethered to a plan, you know, to get out of the multiple kinds of rubble that we are in. I mean, I was struck, you know, but there were a few days of news where it was like the cover of every newspaper was like the top was rubble in Lebanon and the bottom was rubble in North Carolina. And it was just kind of like, this is just rubble world, right? And there's different, you know, this is what capitalism and imperialism have produced. So to be running on joy.
Capitalism produced the devastation in North Carolina. Capitalism produced the carnage that Israel inflicted on Lebanon. Everyone catch that? Remember, guys, the left believes that capitalism is causing every single problem in the world. Every problem is created by capitalism. Climate change was created by capitalism. Israel are the evil settler, colonist, capitalist oppressors of Palestine and, frankly, of like the Middle East. They are the aggressors. They are the imperialists. That means taking the land away from the indigenous people and privatizing it under capitalism. Capitalism is the root of all problems, according to the left. Nope. What does whiteness mean, guys? Whiteness means capitalism. Whiteness was never about skin color. Whiteness means capitalism. No. You're allowed to stay and watch, but you are not going to be rallying for fucking votes in my chat, bro. You're welcome to stay and watch, but no. You are not going to distract from the class. Tayton, sorry this is random, but what are your thoughts on stoicism? I don't think stoicism is fundamentally good or bad. I think that, which is actually a very stoic thing to say, isn't it? I think that stoicism can be very useful in terms of detaching your emotional reaction from any situation that you're in. It can help you look at things a little bit more objectively. It can help you kind of like manage yourself a little bit more effectively to make a better experience for yourself. So I think that, you know, I mean, it really depends on if it works for you. Stoicism does not work for me, although like there are principles of stoicism that I do apply. I kind of view it as one of those things as like, take the parts of it that work for you and apply them, and if stuff in it doesn't work for you and apply for you, like you can leave the rest behind, sort of thing. But I think it's a good thing to look into for everyone. And I'm glad you're doing that, Tayton. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, I mean, I hope you stick around, dude. I allow everyone of every political persuasion to watch my content. I just want you to know that we are anti-communist here. We're not on your team. We're not voting for Kamala Harris. I'm not voting for Trump either, but I'm definitely not voting for Harris. Like, I want you to be very clear about where you are right now. We are not leftists. But you're allowed to stay here, just be nice.
With some kind, it has to be tethered to a plan, you know, to get out of the multiple kinds of rubble that we are in. I mean, I was struck, you know, but there were a few days of news where it was like the cover of every newspaper was like the top was rubble in Lebanon and the bottom.
What is the background of the word whiteness? Okay, so you want me to explain why whiteness means capitalism. So here it is. Capitalism is defined as private property ownership. Private property means things like bourgeois property, things that you can use to generate wealth. Private property is defined by, and all of the words I'm giving and the definitions I'm giving are the definitions of the communist and socialist left. These are not my definitions. I'm explaining to you what the left believes, okay? When they say private property, what they mean is your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own an apartment rental that you rent out as a landlord, your ability to own intellectual property, your ability to own a business, whether that business be big or small, your parental rights over your children are considered to be a form of private property because parental rights allow for the passing of generational wealth from father to son. It also is because they want to destroy the nuclear family because they view the nuclear family as the literal means of reproduction of capitalism. That's why they attack all parental rights. They also view individual liberties like freedom of speech, freedom of religion to be forms of private property under capitalism that will be abolished when the Marxists take over, because you cannot have a Marxist society as long as you have individualism. Individualism and meritocracy fundamentally create capitalism, which again is defined as private property ownership. The reason they want to abolish all private property is when some people own more private property than others, those people are at the top of a hierarchy. The people that own less private property than others are at the bottom of the hierarchy. That's where you get bourgeois proletariat, oppressor versus oppressed. What the left is trying to do in implementing their Marxist utopia is level all hierarchies. Equity means leveling the hierarchy. It's important that you understand the definition of the term capitalism to understand how whiteness means capitalism. What the left does is, we just mentioned a minute ago that the left believes that capitalism created all problems in society. Every single problem. Every single crazy idea that you see the left advancing is an effort to abolish capitalism. Everything leads back to that. They believe capitalism created racism, capitalism created gender inequality, capitalism created homophobia, transphobia, queerphobia, disability, like people with disabilities being being oppressed. They believe it created climate change. They believe, listen. You're just, okay, I'm going to go back to that explanation in a second. Your analysis is really reductive and monodimensional. You seem desperate to lay everything back to capitalism. Bro, I have watched more far-left training than anyone in the world over the last 3+ years. I have watched every single far-left group in this country today. I have watched every major activist in the country today. I have gone undercover at multiple socialist events. I have the widest knowledge of what the real revolutionary far left is doing in the country than anyone in the country today. And if you think that you know someone who knows more than me, tell me who they fucking are. Give me a fucking name. You're the one that doesn't know what you're talking about. You're the one that has no experience in this scenario. You're the one who's never been in my chat before, by the way, because I recognize you if you were, but you've never been here before, that's coming in to cause fucking problems. So sit the fuck down and listen. Maybe you'll learn something, or maybe you're just not smart enough to be here. And if you continue to cause problems in my chat, we're just going to ban you and we're going to kick you out of the class because we're going to judge that you're not smart enough to be here. Sit the fuck down and shut up. Now, back to the explanation that I was giving to the reasonable question that I was asked. Hang on. So, we've established that the left's definition of capitalism is private property ownership. Every single thing I told you that they defined as private property is stuff I have them saying on video. None of it comes from me. It all comes from them. They believe that capitalism, private property ownership, created all problems in society. One of the problems that they believe capitalism created was racism. How did capitalism create racism? Because racism is the ownership of people as private property. The left believes that white people were created when black slaves were brought to America. They believe that that was the invention of quote-unquote white people. Because prior to white people, and we can argue that they were Jewish too, but Jews have assimilated to whiteness according to the left, and that's a different discussion we're going to have another time. I'm not going to go down that road right now, but I would also say they weren't always just white, they were Jewish. But like people who brought slaves to America, they were mostly Jewish, but we're going to call them white for the purposes of this because the left deems them white, okay? Does everyone understand that? We're calling them white for the purposes of this, but a lot of people who brought slaves to America were Jewish, I'm just saying, but we're going to call them white for the purposes of this because that's what the left thinks. So, here we go. So, in other words, you ban everyone that doesn't agree with you. Yup. Yes, I do. You want to know why? Because this is my private fucking property. I am the dictator on my channel. I am the fascist fucking dictator cult leader on my channel. My show is literally called The Cult Bro. My rules apply here. If you don't like them, get the fuck out. In fact, I just banned you, so now you're getting the fuck out. Funny how that works. Back to this. See? Even socialists love me. Socialists like me more than pussy conservatives who get their fifis hurt. So, capitalism created slavery. When slaves were brought to America, that was the creation of white people. Prior to white people bringing slaves to America, they referred to themselves by their ethnicity. They referred to themselves as English or Irish or French or Jewish or Spanish or Jewish. And then they brought slaves to America, and they had to come up with a way to distinguish the private property owners from the private property. Thus, white and black were born. All right? So that's slavery. Slavery then created systemic racism, which are racial disparities in outcomes based on mostly a lack of generational wealth that was caused by slavery. Almost every single reference to racism today, and this has been true since like 2009, because Barack Obama's election to president is when we became a post-racial society, according to the left, okay? So since about 2009, almost every reference, not everyone, but almost everyone, is a reference to systemic racism, not individual racism. If it's a reference to individual racism, it's a reference to white skin. But if they're talking about systemic racism or institutional racism, they are talking about the system that upholds racism or the institution that upholds racism. So when they say whiteness, white supremacy, racism, anti-racism, they're talking about at a system level. The system they're talking about is the system that created slavery in the first place, and that system is capitalism. So that's why whiteness means capitalism, okay? Because it's not a reference to individual skin color. Remember, the left does not operate as individuals. The left doesn't believe in individualism. The left operates as a collective. They're looking at it from the system level. Their goal is always to abolish capitalism. So what they say is that you cannot abolish racism without abolishing capitalism. And I have them saying this explicitly. I have a presentation called How to Speak Socialist. You can find it on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. Just go to the How to Speak Socialist section at the top. It'll be right at the top of that page. But they very literally say we cannot abolish racism without abolishing capitalism because capitalism is the system that upholds racism. That's what systemic racism means. Does everyone understand that? Let me just do a quick pause. Does everyone understand that? Please let me know if you have questions. Do I agree with that? No, but that doesn't matter, Jaxie. And again, you're new here, so I give new people a little bit more slack. This is not about what I agree with or disagree with. What I think doesn't matter. What I agree or disagree with doesn't matter. This is about understanding what their perspective is. I am explaining to you what their perspective is. Well, of course you know, because you're a socialist. Of course you know. No, this is not about being a bleeding heart. That's not what it is. Why do you left it? Because they believe, they really do believe that it's going to create a better world. They really do. But also, you have to keep in mind, a lot of times people on the right, they confuse the WEF and the globalists with the radical revolutionary socialists. And they're not the same thing. So a lot of the elites, the really elite people, they don't support this shit. The real elite people do not support radical revolutionary socialists. The real elite people support the WEF globalists. Now, I'm not saying the WEF globalists and all that stuff isn't a problem, but it is a completely separate problem from the radical revolutionary socialists. Both of them want a globalist new world order, like literally, but they don't work together and they don't like each other. And so what you're going to have happen is you basically have two different baseball teams. You have like the Red Sox and the Yankees. And just because they're both playing baseball and just because they both want the World Series title, that doesn't mean they're working together. They're actually on two separate teams. It just means they're going to fight at some point. And they will fight at some point. And we'll see who wins, I guess. It's easy to see why people would think it means skin color. Yes, it is easy to see why people would think it's skin color. It absolutely is easy. But this is why I take the time every time someone asks to explain that really deliberately so people can understand this isn't just word salad. There is actually a logic to what they think. And if you understand that their primary target is always capitalism, and you understand that capitalism means private property ownership, and you understand how that relates to the question of racism and how that relates to the question of slavery, then you start to see it. And that's, honestly, if you understand that whiteness means capitalism and you understand why, that is the biggest hurdle to understanding the left. And if you get over that hurdle, everything else is easy. And it gets crazier than that, but that's the biggest thing. Do they acknowledge that some blacks held slaves? So first of all, they don't really care about other countries. They are exclusively focused on America. And so they don't really care about what's going on in other countries. Do they acknowledge that blacks held slaves? I mean, they talk about black people being white all the time. So again, the categories of white and black, it might sound like it's related to skin color, but it really means the owner versus the owned. The property owner versus the property, the bourgeois versus the proletariat. They say all the time that black people can be white too. So it doesn't really matter to them. But that's a really good question. Yeah, you have to let them speak and listen. That's exactly right. That's actually a good question. In this case, I was not using it as a euphemism. If I mean the Jews, I'll say the Jews. But like, I actually was not using it as a euphemism in that case. I meant the WEF. That's what I was referring to. But that's actually a good question. See, our socialist friend says whiteness has nothing to do with skin color. Exactly. See, the socialists all agree with me. Like, the conservatives are complaining about it being about skin color, and I'm like, the actual fucking communists agree with me. Every time the actual communists agree with me. I'm just scrolling through the chat to see if there are any other questions, guys. Jaxie, it is hard, but listen, it gets easier. You're right now, again, you're relatively new to this. It gets easier. Trust me, like, your brain is going to adapt to this. Just stick with it. Please keep coming back. All right, let's keep going, guys.
Bottom was rubble in North Carolina. And it was just kind of like, this is just rubble world, right? And there's different, this is what capitalism and imperialism have produced. So to be running on joy in that moment without any kind of plan to get us out of the rubble is a sort of a wild marketing decision.
It was just vibes for so long, right? No policy, right?
But I think Yank is absolutely right that I think that they fooled themselves because they mistook relief for joy. Like, just huge relief. Like, we were like,
Oh yeah, you discovered me. So normally my streams start at 5 p.m. I started a little bit late today. I apologize. But like, normally I'm 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then I do 6 p.m. on Saturdays. Maybe that, well, no, I guess Timcast is now sticking around. But welcome back, Flaw Patriot. We're glad to have you.
And it did feel a little joyful for a minute, but that wasn't actual joy. That was just, okay, he's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my personal feelings about this election are kind of resentful that it takes up so much of our attention, right? That it is this spectacle. And the fact is, you said these seem to be the two choices. And one of the two will win, right? Harris or Trump will win because that's how our political system is structured. And ultimately, the election will be decided by 8 states out of 50. That's the reality. So sometimes I wonder why, when we're sitting in New York, are we thinking as much about this instead of using our energy into putting our energy towards building things that we need as human beings, as organizers, regardless of who's going to be in office, right? I mean, we need infrastructure to push a Harris administration or to protect ourselves under a Trump administration, to protect ourselves under a Harris administration too. But I think that is, that's the reality, that our electoral system is so fucked up that a small number of people are going to decide this. I happen to live in North Carolina right now, where the rubble is very real and where my vote counts, more than it does in a lot of other places. So I'm feeling a sense that of frustration with how much energy the election sucks from tasks that might be a lot more, I think, important when we talk about life beyond November.
Absolutely. The only thing I'll add to this briefly is that for me, the election, I think, has so much power in shaping how we think about issues, right? Limiting it to sort of to the national sphere in a way, right? Narrating things around personalities, where we're invited to think that everything that's happening on the right is essentially all coming out of Trump's mind, as opposed to looking at the long strategy that the conservatives have rolled out, and other things. And so, it's like, even I think for leftists, right? And people, I just remember being involved in campaigns that were about, housing, right? Trying to, stop evictions or whatever, all these other things. And then when the election cycle comes, everything gets funneled into that. And so, and by the way, that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad to have these folks, right, who can kind of help us to kind of think through. And on that note, I want to turn to kind of another question, which is, one thing I notice about all of our work, and probably we share this with folks in the room, as I see, our comrades in the room, is like, we're all news junkies. We sort of have to be, right? Just constantly paying attention to the news, right? And again, what I appreciate about my colleagues here is the way that in paying attention to the news, we can attend to some things that are like, sometimes like absurd, right? Because I mean, look, we're dealing with serious times, and I don't want to make light of that, but is this news cycle wild? I mean, some of the stuff that's going on, it's just like,
I actually think it's
I know that's probably
boring,
like every historical moment has that, but when I see some of the stuff like in North Carolina, and when I see, whether it's conspiracy theories, whether it's all kinds of, anything you might see on the internet, some of the talking points of the election, it's like, this is absurd, right? So one of the things I appreciate about my colleagues is your ability to kind of attend to those things, but to also do so in a way that still points us forward to something useful. So what have y'all noticed? Has anything caught y'all attention? I'm just curious, like, about, like in this moment that you think is like an indicator in terms of current events.
They're all looking at me because they know that I've been digging into the hurricane conspiracy theories. And I've become interested in conspiracy culture because I feel like it is sort of, it's a mirror, kind of a warped mirror showing us needs that are going unfulfilled, right? And so I have done a deep dive into the various theories swirling around the hurricanes. And I mean, I don't call them theories because they're not coherent. Same with COVID.
Hang on. Do leftist elites expect to keep their wealth and power? No. Well, okay. So again. What you're talking about is WEF Malthusians. That's not what we're watching here. You've got to separate the two. Obama, Clinton, that's WEF Malthusian. That is not radical revolutionary socialist in the United States. These are two completely different groups. So I don't speak to WEF Malthusians. We don't study WEF Malthusians. WEF Malthusians are not the ones controlling the public schools. WEF Malthusians are not the ones controlling the universities. These are radical revolutionary socialists. And again, I'm not suggesting the WEF Malthusians are not a problem. I'm just suggesting they are a different problem. These are two different baseball teams. You're saying, like, I'm showing you a video about the Boston Red Sox right now, and you're asking me about the New York Yankees. And I'm like, we're not talking about the New York Yankees right now. We're talking about the Boston Red Sox. But you're like, they're both baseball teams, aren't they? Well, yeah, I mean, they're both baseball teams, but they're not friends. They're going to fight. So the border, socialists socialists don't believe in borders. They believe in borders are enforcement mechanisms of capitalism, so they want to get rid of all borders. They want completely open borders. That includes state borders, town borders, county borders, all the borders. By the way, when the left wins, there will be no more United States because there will be no more states because there will be no more borders. The left also wants to abolish the police, defund the police, abolish the prison industrial complex. That is where all that comes from. That is not from WEF Malthusian. That is from radical revolutionary socialist. I guess they don't care if some who are unfamiliar with their terminology take whiteness to mean skin color and target. There aren't as many people targeting white people as you think. That's mostly conservative bullshit propaganda. And I know you can always say, but what about this video? But what about this video? You're talking about exceptions. You're not talking about the rule. The vast, 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 vast majority, we're talking like 95%. The vast majority of the time, the left is talking about whiteness, white supremacy, white people, white privilege. They are not talking about skin color. They are talking about systemic racism, which means capitalism. You just think it's about skin color because you've been unfamiliar with their language and it's been presented to you in a certain way from people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. But you really have to wrap your head around this. And I promise you, once you start looking for it, look for all the times that they're talking about whiteness or quote unquote white people or white privilege. White privilege just means beneficiary of capitalism, by the way. It means beneficiary of private property ownership. Look for all the times they're talking about it at the system level, not the individual level. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Hey, Andre, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for your freedom of speech rights. You allow us via free market capitalism, your private property ownership show, your hard work exposing radical revolutionary socialists to get us addicted to respect instead of their racism into eternity. Well, thank you, Andre. I do appreciate the super chat. Guys, I'm supported when you see fit to support me. So if you feel like I'm doing a good job today teaching you about the radical revolutionary socialists, please feel free to throw in a $5 super chat, $10 super chat, $20 super chat. Help me get my super chat goal because I only make money when you guys like what I'm doing. So if you appreciate the work I'm doing for free on a Wednesday afternoon, please feel free to throw into the pot. You allow me to do what I do. I really do appreciate it.
They are riding on a lot of the infrastructure, like informational infrastructure that was built, in the pandemic disinformation and misinformation about COVID health measures.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a
then
bad
when all
idea,
the health measures were lifted, people were looking around going, oh, where are we going to get that kind of excitement and lift off and sort of sense of like we're creating reality, for ourselves. And the disasters really are providing that. So it's not so much a theory, but if it were a theory, it would be, okay, climate change is a hoax that was dreamed up by the Davos elite in order to lock you in your home and make you eat bugs and use all of these, this green tech that they're getting rich off of. The storms were created by Bill Gates, who also tried to track you with the vaccines.
Created the storms.
The weather is manipulated in order to hit red states that would vote for Trump. And the reason why they can't respond to it is because all the money has gone to migrants. And
Hey, thank you, Jane.
they also are not even trying to
Appreciate you.
respond because they want these communities to drown so that they won't vote for Trump. But also they want the lithium in order to build the solar panels and the batteries.
So right now, what Naomi Klein is doing is basically demonstrating why normal people tend to think that the right are unhinged lunatics with all the crazy conspiracy theories that they put forward. And listen, I'm not suggesting that some of those conspiracy theories don't turn out to be real, but I think that conservatives have created an echo chamber for themselves where they think their conspiracy theories are good for normal people, whereas most people just think they're crazy. And Naomi Klein is demonstrating right now that most people just think they're crazy. I understand what you're saying, the WEF versus radicals, but I don't see the difference between the current administration. RMB, the people in this presentation have told you directly they hate the current administration. They hate Kamala Harris. It's not as though some of their policies don't trickle down, but it is trickled down. It's not the same thing. And really, the best advice and guidance I can give you is that you need to stick around and watch more. And I know that's not the answer that you want, but I'm not going to be able to convince you unless you stick around and watch more of this content that these are different things. You're going to be able to see it when you see the content for yourself, but we've already explained it to you. And listen, sometimes you just need to think about things. So that's going to be my best advice. If you want to understand this, I stream this content almost every single day of the week. You can come back anytime. Just let the ideas marinate. Sometimes that's just what's required. It's not a knock at you. Sometimes that's just what's required. I'll super chat the S out of you as soon as I can. Hey, I appreciate that. I love your stuff already. I was brought by your Timcast IRL reaction video. Couldn't agree with you more. Hey, I appreciate it. Welcome. Please stick around. Rottweiler, thank you for the super chat. For the newbies, radical socialists don't take money from the WEF. True. They despise Obama and Clinton. True. The radical revolutionary socialists do not like Obama or Clinton. They dismiss them as capitalist elitists that would compromise their cause. Conservative influencers know jack shit. Oh gosh, truer words have never been spoken. Thank you, Rottweiler, for the super chat. I really do appreciate you. Guys, as a reminder, if you have questions at any point, please feel free to chat them in. We do take all questions. And we love helping people understand this stuff. So mount the like button if you appreciate it for me.
But not the Tesla batteries, because, of course, Elon Musk is one of the main spreaders of said conspiracies. So that's, an overview. But it's I mean, for me, as somebody, I wrote a book called The Shock Doctrine. It is about the reality that actually people do get taken advantage of by corporations and nefarious governments doing their dirty deeds in the aftermath of disasters. I mean, this is journalism that I have done, that many of us have done in the aftermath of Katrina, Hurricane Maria. So, I mean, really, it's weird to see a kind of a doppelganger version of the shock doctrine play out, but just made up, like out of thin air. But then the response from liberals is like, what are you talking about? That would never happen. And FEMA's great. FEMA's not great, I mean, and there is like, everything is perfect, right? And so then that just further fuels the conspiracy culture, right? And it's very sort of similar to, I think, the dynamic that a lot of us locked ourselves into during COVID, which was just reactive. So yeah, so I'm sort of paying attention to how that's playing out.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me not to want to. I'm living my
backyard.
Yeah, my parents. Sorry, my parents are in Asheville. My sister's in Asheville. My family's there. I'm there a whole lot, and it has other layers. Than the mayor of the mayor of Asheville is a Jewish woman.
I forgot the Jews.
The Jews.
Also, it's the Jews. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. But unironically,
Asheville, North Carolina has had
is,
3
though.
Jewish mayors. It's very suspicious because of the Jewish lasers that control the weather. And so, to suppress the Republican vote, the mayor of Asheville seemed to have destroyed her own county, which is overwhelmingly liberal. But, it's just incredibly sad, right? Because the thing is, FEMA, however, flawed, is actually there, and these rumors, people are sort of lone actors are going around armed with weapons, threatening FEMA officials, and the FEMA officials leave, and so it does become this very distressing, self-fulfilling prophecy where people then are denied that government assistance. So.
Can we just acknowledge that Ulysses might be our new favorite socialist? And I know you say you're a social democrat, but we're going to call you a socialist. Just because we just embrace it, dude. We're going to call you a socialist. But to be fair, we used to have a pet socialist on the channel named Autumn, and Autumn was a giant pain in the ass. And so eventually I just banned Autumn. Autumn will come back at some point. She'll create another account or something. But I think that Ulysses is a much better socialist. He's much more entertaining. He's much more agreeable. Ulysses is welcome back anytime. Congratulations, Ulysses. We're adopting you on our channel.
It is next level to have it so close to home, to have these kind of lies be peddled. I was thinking, as a kind of follow-up to yours, though, that there is the more respectable forms of conspiracy theories, the sort of more respectable lies. And we see a lot of these in right-wing litigation because, as we know, the conservative takeover of the courts has been going on for decades, but really did speed up under the last Trump administration when he appointed hundreds of district and circuit judges. This is something I've been watching more closely because of my work with the Debt Collective and our fight for student debt cancellation, which failed largely because of the Biden administration not following our advice in canceling debt automatically. But the right-wing lawsuits certainly played a role. So in the case of the litigation against student debt relief, for example, relief was struck down based on totally false claims that a loan servicer called Mohila, that you might know of if you have federal student loans. Who has Mohila? Yeah. So the idea that Mohila, which is tied to the state of Missouri, was being harmed, right? Because cancellation would mean that they would get less revenue, and then they would actually not pay back a debt they owe the state of Missouri, regardless of the fact that they hadn't been paying it for years. This was completely baseless. This was completely false. So, that kind of got us interested in this idea of like, wow, okay, there are a lot of lies and strange things happening in these court cases. And so the one I wanted to, you mentioned like current absurdities. So just remember Missouri there. The other day, a case was filed amending the litigation against abortion pills, right? Mifepristone. That case, we all celebrated because it didn't make it to SCOTUS. Because
what does abortion pills have to do with capitalism? Pop quiz for the chat. We've already discussed earlier how capitalism creates all the world's problems. And now this person's up on stage talking about mifepristone and the other abortion pill. There are 2 abortion pills that you can use to literally bleed out your child into the toilet, which I've learned all about by going to socialist reproductive justice conferences. But pop quiz for the chat. What do abortion pills have to do with capitalism? Abortion pills are women's liberation from the Fordist family. That's an interesting way of putting it, average person. Abortion pills free women from having to do the unpaid labor of raising children. Exactly. Mothers do the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarian workers in the form of children. Reproductive rights destroy the hierarchy and equity for genders. Yup, abortion on demand, including abortion pills. Free women from the gender binary. It frees women from the patriarchy. They, of course, believe the gender binary, which is also called the patriarchy, they're the same thing, were created by capitalism. The gender binary puts men in the workplace where they have access to all the power and all the money. It puts women in the home where they do the unpaid labor of raising the next generation of proletarian workers. That is the children in the nuclear family. Through abortion pills, they are able to free women from that oppressive gender role of raising the children. Well done.
They found out that the groups, they decided that the groups behind it didn't have legal standing. So 3 Republican-controlled states have become plaintiffs. One of them is Missouri, which is controlled by an all-Republican government, including a very wacky attorney general. And their claim essentially is that access to abortion pills harms the state of Missouri. And so I just want to read this because this is their argument. The remote dispensing of abortion drugs is depressing expected birth rates for teenage mothers. And this loss of potential population causes further injuries as well. The state's subsequent, quote, diminishment of political representation and loss of federal funds, such as potentially losing a seat in Congress and qualifying for less federal funding if their populations are smaller, will diminish the state's well-being. In other words, we need to ensure that teenagers are forced to have unwanted children so that the state of Missouri can have more people and get more Congress representatives and more revenue from the federal government. So these are the kinds of cases that are getting real traction. I mean, like 2 weeks ago, for example, student loan relief was blocked on the basis of something that hadn't actually happened yet. And they are conspiracy theories on some, I mean, they're not conspiracy theories, but they're absolutely fabricated arguments that are being heard by these MAGA judges who now have a shocking amount of power. But
wow. Okay, stuff in the news. Not conspiracy theories. I am sort of curious. You can always tell it's election season because all of a sudden elected officials and people in the media are concerned about what Black people think. So I have been very interested about the coverage of Black voters. And there were two things that stood out. One was Obama. You know,
she sounds like a big fan of Obama, doesn't
and
she?
Cousin Pookie has reappeared on the scene. So Obama, I think a week ago, was chastising Black men for not falling in line with Kamala Harris. And one of the interesting things I thought about in regards to that was at the DNC, Obama gave a speech which kind of tied together with the theme that several other kind of high-profile speakers made, which seemed to be a really trying to make amends for the kind of overreaction to Trump voters in earlier elections. So Hillary Clinton,
No.
really.
No. Everything they say has a logic. You don't understand. What you're expecting, what's going on right now is you've gone to France and you're expecting everyone to speak English. The people in France don't speak English. Okay, many of them do, but just go with the analogy. The people in France don't speak English. They speak French. And you're going there and you're expecting them to speak English. And when they don't speak English, you're like, what kind of conspiracy theory is this? Or you're going to China and you're expecting everyone to speak English, but they speak Mandarin. You're expecting them to speak a different language than which they speak. That's why it sounds like a conspiracy theory. But this is one of those things where this is a language that you will learn over time. You will learn to become fluent in it. You just have to watch more of the content. But you have to allow yourself to learn it is the thing. And this is why I always tell people, they come into the chat and they say, this is word salad, or this is a conspiracy. This doesn't make any sense. This is why you guys have to get that out of your head. Because if you are in here and you're watching this and in your head you're going, this is word salad, this is not logical, they don't know what they're talking about, they don't even know what they want, this doesn't make sense, then it's going to prevent you from learning their language. But if you just allow yourself to realize that you're trying to learn how to speak French, you're trying to learn how to speak Russian, you're trying to learn how to speak Mandarin, you're learning a different language, it's going to sound like it doesn't make sense for a while. But once you learn the language, it will all make sense.
Going back to Hillary Clinton referring to Trump voters as a basket full of deplorables or something. And so Obama, and in this sort of shift to, we want to reach out to these, some of these people, talked about the need to be patient and, to listen to people, to not make judgments about people. And then in the last week, essentially dismissed the concerns of, a small contingent of voters as sexist. And so what I thought was interesting about this was I looked at some very extensive poll of who Black voters are today, basically. And one of the things that was pointed out was that 15% of Black voters who describe themselves as Republicans, so this is basically men and women, make between $25,000 and $50,000 a year. And I thought within that context that I'm sure there's sexism that is a part of the mix in terms of the complaints about Kamala Harris, but I also thought about, what some of her rollout has been over the last week or so to appeal to Black male voters in the first place. And it's more regulations of cryptocurrency. It's investment and mentor programs. It's $20,000 entrepreneurial loans that are forgivable, and specifically, they want to create pathways into the cannabis industry.
I should just start growing weed. That should be my new endeavor.
That's it. So
I want a $25,000 forgivable loan for growing weed.
The $25,000 for homeowners, but
one in the chat if I should just give up everything I'm doing and open a grow house and a dispensary. Wouldn't that be so relaxing, though? I don't know if I can legally do that in New Hampshire. I'm sure I could. That might be my next venture. I'm gonna give everything up. I'm shutting down the YouTube channel. I'm opening a grow house and a dispensary, and I'm gonna make slime on the side just as a hobby. And we're not doing anti-communism anymore. We're growing weed now. Now we're farmers. We're farmers now. We're the ultimate capitalists. That's it. My channel's gonna go into I'm gonna get a $25,000 forgivable loan from Kamala Harris. I'm reformatting my entire YouTube channel. We can start our own commune. We'll get ahead of the game. We'll start our own commune.
Most Black people are renters, so on and so forth. So I thought that this really kind of got to one of the issues that the campaign is having. Black men have been a particular focus, I think, because Kamala Harris is a Black woman, but she is off by 10% with Black women voters compared to those who voted for Biden in 2020, off by 22% of voters 18 to 29 compared to who voted for Biden in 2020. And I think across the board, there are deficits in comparison to where Biden was at. And so for me, that this raised a question, not just about
I don't want to make
strategies.
I don't want to make knitting a job.
Harris and the Democratic Party, but it did raise questions about what we're talking about.
No. Again, Jack sees news, so we're being nice. If it's all about capitalism, why does the left vote for Kamala? They don't. They don't. We've watched multiple presentations in the past couple months from socialists saying we are not voting for the lesser of two evils. They literally protested the DNC. All the protesters for the DNC were socialists and communists. They're not voting for Kamala Harris. The people who you saw Vivek Ramaswamy talking to outside the DNC were revolutionary communists. We've covered them on the channel. They're not voting for Kamala Harris. We infiltrated the Denver Communists, one of their calls the other day, or the Firebrand Collective, one of their organizing calls, all about how they're not voting for Kamala Harris. They do not intend to vote for her at all. So, they're not. And again, anyone who tells you that Kamala Harris is a communist is lying. Anyone who tells you that communists and socialists support Kamala Harris is lying. They don't, and they talk about it all the time, openly.
What kind of politics and movement can we envision that captures the attention, the participation of people who feel
yeah, we're gonna call it weed
alienated,
brand weed. Yeah, exactly.
By this particular party, who are Black, who are white, who are Latino, who feel alienated, and that is one of the questions that I come back to when thinking about what does it mean to be politically active beyond this campaign season, and what needs to happen.
Thanks
to
for stopping
actually
by, all seeing guy.
engage people so that the politics don't just rise and fall with each presidential election or congressional election, but how do we build something that is not just tied to the electoral cycle? I think is a question beyond the ballot that we are trying to grapple with.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Oh, I just wanted to say there will be a great essay in the new issue of Hammer and Hope about this opportunity agenda for Black men called Black Men Don't Need Opportunity, They Need Abolition. So, what would?
That means abolish the police.
I have not yet read that essay.
When she says that Black men don't need opportunity, they need abolition, that is a reference to abolishing the police, defunding the police, abolishing the prison industrial complex.
And I really appreciate this insight, but I do want to take issue with one thing you said. Studying the Black radical tradition, one demand stands out, it just shines out: crypto, right? When you're just, it's clear. And so I don't know what you've been reading, but that's. But on a serious note, I really appreciate this analysis, and I would say, I think it was a missed opportunity, because what happens is Obama sort of rolls out with I saw one commentator referred to as the brothers smackdown, and he's like, "Hey brothers, let's, I think he said something like, the choice is clear. It's between someone who comes from where you come from, and he did that sort of shtick, and then
they're shit talking
pushback
Obama
to that was
right now.
people saying, well, Black men are not the problem here, right? And that's fine. But the problem is there is a real issue, I think, with men, and I'm just going to say with men. I'm not even going to say like working class men. I know, and as a man, I've been talking to men. There's an issue, right? There's a kind of, I would even say there's all these portals into fascism, right?
Okay. Pop quiz. Why is it that socialists believe that men who don't want to vote, Black men not wanting to vote for Kamala Harris, is a portal into fascism? He just said that Black men who don't want to vote for Kamala Harris is you can see it, portal into fascism. Why? I don't actually care if she wins, if I'm honest about it. I don't care who wins. It doesn't matter. I'm not voting, so it doesn't matter to me. Why do socialists believe that Black men who refuse to vote for Kamala Harris is a portal into fascism? Socialism, yeah, that's true, but keep going. What this is you got to think abstractly for this one. That's not the right answer, Jaxie, but good guess. Good guess. This is a tough one. Why are Black men who refuse to vote for a woman, a Black woman, a portal into fascism? These men are reinforcing the hierarchy by not wanting to vote for a woman. What hierarchy are they reinforcing? What hierarchy are they reinforcing? Capitalism created sexism because it created gender. Boom! Capitalism created the gender binary. The gender binary put men in the workplace. It put women in the home. The gender binary is also called the patriarchy. The gender binary is what puts men over women. The gender binary is how men oppress women. If black men don't want to vote for Kamala Harris, they are adhering to the gender binary, which is a construct of capitalism, and thus reinforcing the gender hierarchy. Does everyone get that? And P.S., fascism and socialism means free market capitalism. So anytime they're saying the word fascism, they don't actually mean literal fascism. When I say fascism, when I say I'm a fascist, I actually kind of mean that literally. I'm being a little ironic, but not. I'm being unironically ironic when I say I'm a fascist. It's a little ironic, but not really. When socialists use the word fascism, they mean capitalism, okay? So black men not wanting to vote for a woman reinforces the gender binary, the gender hierarchy, which is a construct that capitalism created. Does that make sense to everyone? Please ask if it doesn't make sense. A while ago, I criticized Z Van Fleet, and I would still criticize Z Van Fleet. Where do you feel she is dishonest or incorrect? Z Van Fleet has been running around saying Kamala Harris is a communist, Kamala Harris is a communist, Kamala Harris is a communist. Z Van Fleet is shilling this conservative bullshit talking point that Kamala Harris is a communist when she is not. That's it. Z Van Fleet also takes her orders directly from James Lindsay, and if James Lindsay doesn't like something that Z Van Fleet is tweeting, James Lindsay will tell Z to stop tweeting that, and she does. And then she makes excuses for it, and then she lies about it. And listen, man, I think that she thinks she's doing the right thing. I really do think she's doing the right thing. It's one of those situations where I've been in the conservative political machine before. I know exactly what's going on in that situation. I don't think Z Van Fleet is a bad person. Z Van Fleet did survive the Cultural Revolution in China. That deserves respect. Z Van Fleet educating people about the Cultural Revolution in China is a good thing. It's a positive thing. Z Van Fleet lying to people to say Kamala Harris is a communist, Kamala Harris is a communist, that's fucking political shilling. And it's disgusting. And it's beneath her. And I wish she was better. And she wasn't doing it. So that's my criticism of her. I do not believe that Z Van Fleet is a bad person. I believe that she's doing an abhorrent thing by shilling a political talking point that is not hinged into reality. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it.
Podcasts, right? Like when I talk to a lot of men who listen to a podcast, as a podcaster, it's like, they say, yo, you got to listen to this podcast. That's the worst thing you want to say as a podcaster, right? You know what I'm saying? There's an opportunity when you're trying to grapple with that to really sort of say, what has actually produced this? What role actually did Democrats play over all these years through multiple administrations, alienating folks? You know, what are the larger trends, right? There's a real conversation to have a real conversation about what this problem is rather than some kind of crude sort of appeal to the, you know, like, oh, it's just misogyny, right? So anyway, I think, you know, but I want to turn to something even a little bit more serious, and I want to just proceed carefully here. You know, especially I think, you know, the last year with everything that's been going on, particularly with what's happening in Palestine, these have been really contentious times, I think, in left politics, and you know, we wanted to have a moment to talk a little bit about our culture and how we deal with each other through disagreement. And I just want to be really present. I don't want to get all too woo-woo here, but I do want to kind of be present because, listen, the emotions that people have experienced, I think, are totally justified. Like if you're not experiencing outrage, right? So I never want to sound like I'm policing someone's rage. I never want to sound like I think everybody's on the same page here that accountability has to be a part of our movements, right? So we don't want to police people for that. And yet, we're trying to, when we talk about beyond the ballot, we're talking about how do we proceed forward in a way where we actually build through those things. So I wanted to start out by talking about something that I have not heard a lot in my journey in political education on the left, which is how people change their minds. Right? I'm going to start there for a minute. And I'm going to give one example of a time when I had a disagreement with colleagues and had to change my mind. And I'll invite my sort of colleagues here to have this. It was. I'll do it briefly because I'm sort of embarrassed to share this. You all are gonna be like, really, Chin? You had to learn that? But I'm gonna come out and do it. I was at Rutgers University, and we were dealing with multiple crises in the university. Right? It was like one of the biggest crises, obviously, is like the way that contingent and adjunct faculty are treated. Right? There's all this workload that they have. They're actually making the university run horrible working conditions. I'm just going to say most of the tenured faculty not standing up for them in the way they're supposed to. So we were dealing with that on the one hand. We were dealing with, the various issues with, all kinds of issues to do with race and gender sort of disparities and things like that. We were dealing with the way that the university was expanding into places in New Jersey, right, and displacing people, right? And we were also dealing with, during the pandemic, for example, Rutgers had all these reserves, right, that they're supposed to use for an emergency. And instead of using those reserves, they were choosing to just lay people off, right, at this horrible time. So to me, I was like, look, let's turn up. Let's labor stoppage. Let's go on strike. Let's do this, as an untenured professor, right? What are we waiting for? And I kind of became impatient, and I went to some of the senior colleagues in our union, and I was like, yo, let's do this, man. Stop working. And they looked at me and they were like, Chinjirai, I feel you. But if we're serious about having a real labor stoppage that has impact and is not simply performative, we might get to that in 9 months. The first thing we have to do is go to each department, see who's with us, make the case. We have to start recruiting. We have to actually get to see if you can get people to wear a t-shirt, fill a survey out. Because if they're not wearing a t-shirt, they're not going to stop labor in any meaningful way.
That's actually a really good point.
So it's not that there's not steps we can take, but we're not getting to labor stoppage tomorrow.
That's actually a really good point. I mean, and listen, and this is a problem that I run into all the time with my stuff, because people always come to me, they ask me almost every single day, they're like, Carlin, what do we need to do to fight back against the left? What do we need to do to fight back against the left? And my answer is always the same. You need to show up and learn. That is your first step. Show up, learn. And if you're not willing to show up and learn about the left, there is nothing that I can give you that you're going to be able to implement effectively. And what he just said is listen, you want to organize people to end this labor crisis. You want people to very literally risk their jobs to organize as a part of ending this labor thing at Rutgers. I don't know exactly what he's talking about, but you want people to do something. If you want people to do something big, you have to get them to do something small first. And if they're not willing to do the small thing, they're never going to get to the big thing. And so it's if you're not willing to show up and learn, you're not going to do anything to defeat the left. If you're not willing to put on a fucking t-shirt, you're not going to be able to do anything to defeat the left. If you're not willing to get your ass out from behind your TV and go to a rally every once in a while, you're not going to be able to do anything to beat the left. If you're not willing to teach other people what's going on, you're not going to be able to do anything to defeat the left. You have to do the small things before you do the big things. And if you jump right in and you say, give me a list of the things I can do, and you don't want to do the small things, I'm not going to give you I'm not going to say, go run for school board. Why would I say run for school board? Running for school board is significantly harder than sitting your ass on the internet for a couple hours a day and learning about the left. So you do the small thing first, and then maybe if you do the small thing over and over and over again and you get really good at the small thing, then you go to the medium thing, then you go to the hard thing. It's like lifting weights. You start off with the small weights. Once you can do the small weights, you go up to the medium weights. Once you can do the medium weights, you go up to the higher weights. You don't just jump right into the higher weights. If you jump into the higher weights, you're going to hurt yourself. And it's going to be ineffective. And then you're never going to want to lift weights again because you're going to hurt yourself. It's the same thing with this.
Or next week. And it was a profound. And not just to hear them say that, but then to actually watch that process occur twice, actually, since that conversation, right? Folks go through that and achieve victories, that were, it was very contentious. So that was a time when I learned. And, I feel like that particular thing about our timelines is one of the things that's on the table. But yeah, anybody have another experience they're willing to share?
I mean, I think I just love your story so much because it's true, right? These are structure tests. Can you get someone to do something small? Get a group of people to do something small before you make the big move. So I think that is such an important lesson. I hope we all learn it. I guess inspired by your kind of introduction, I think for me, even realizing how important, so not just having a plan, okay, first we're going to fill the form out, and then we're going to sign the petition, and then we're going to wear the t-shirt, and then we're going to, escalate our asks. I mean, having a strategy and a plan is so critical. But I think a huge shift for me, and I would say it was changing my mind because I think I would have kind of revolted against this idea, is just how important attending to people's emotions is actually. So when you're talking about the emotional weight of the last year,
yeah,
I mean, I think organizing is just way more about feelings than I thought. I think I was the kind of person who was like, you make the right arguments, you have the facts, you tell people the truth. That's how it happens. Dream on. I mean, I was in Washington Square Park yesterday, and there were these people, I felt such kinship with them. They had their anonymous masks on. They were standing in a circle showing footage of animals being slaughtered, right? It's just like really displaying this faith, like people will see this truth, they will change, they will join our movement. And I think, we laughed at that idea, but I think the left betrays that idea a lot. I mean, I think the left betrays a faith in this idea that if we can just argue with folks and argue them into our position, that we're actually right, that we do that a lot. And so in my last two books, I think have tried to talk more about the emotional life of politics and how, for example, in the age of insecurity, how the right is exploiting people's insecurity, perpetuating it. It's what I call manufactured insecurity, in order to benefit from that fear, to capitalize on it. And I think we need to be a lot more astute about emotions.
They are doing that.
And that means like not just shaming people, not
really
moralizing in a way.
Really? You mean you can't just show up and call people fat and ugly and expect them to vote for you? Really? I had no idea. That seemed to be the entire electoral strategy of the political right, is just to call everyone they disagree with fat and ugly and then expect them to still vote for them. Really? You mean that doesn't work? You mean the leftists know that doesn't work? I'm shocked by this revelation.
It turns folks off. And being more in tune with ourselves too. I mean, the other night, it turned out that I really cared about this bowl because my husband broke it, and then I got really mad. And I was like, that was my bowl, and you broke it. And I got really pissed off. I didn't know I liked this bowl so much. It was literally just a bowl. And he's more EQ than me. So he was like, why are you getting so mad? Like, what are you sad about, right? And I was so sad because my town, my town is like fucking.
She's about to cry over the bowl.
This hurricane. Sorry.
It's legit though. I mean, listen, we've all had stuff like that happen.
My mom had called just like weeping, and I'd watched for some reason all day. I'd watched Shaban Al-Dasu, the 19-year-old kid.
I once got really upset because my husband, it was either my husband or my mother, I'm not sure which one, but they broke a glass in my house, and it was just a glass. But I got really upset because it was a glass of a 4-glass set, which was the first set of glasses that I bought when I bought my house. And it was just a fucking glass, but I was really upset that glass broke. It was a really nice glass. But I still have 3 more of them, but I was still upset about it. Some of your detractors should be taking notes whenever they don't have a reasoned argument against you, they just report like, yeah, I mean, well, this is all they ever say. Yeah, they call me Jewish. I'm like 99.9% European with 0% Jewish. And it's just like, what fucking retards, honestly.
From Gaza. And I was just like, decided it was, I mean, my unconscious was like, it'd be easier to yell about this stupid bowl than cry on stage in front of people,
Astra.
And so we're, on the left, we say, don't mourn, organize, right? And there's truth to that because self-care isn't going to do it for us. Crying in my husband's arms isn't going to do it. We do need to organize, and organize is an amazing form of solace and community, but we also do need to mourn. So, I've been saying lately, we need to morganize, right? We need to be able to hold these feelings together and make our movements welcoming to people in their emotions, their feelings, and their complexity. I mean, the last thing I want to say is I gave a talk about solidarity in Toronto the other day. And afterwards, these 20-year-old kids came up to me and they were asking about how to organize and asking me about solidarity. And one of them, this maybe 22, 23, she said, it's really hard because my generation is so mean to each other. We're so mean to people who have made mistakes. And I just looked at her and I said, well, what did you do? And she said, my family was Zionist. And to me, I just was like, you didn't make a mistake. You are now organizing for liberation in Palestine, right? Like this isn't something that you should feel ashamed of or bad about. You actually have this amazing gift now, this capacity to talk to folks who still agree with that perspective and to bring them on this journey and to help open their minds. And a left that makes people feel ashamed for worldviews they were born into is never going to get anywhere. Mm-hmm. We're going to get smaller and smaller, and we're going to be, letting all of our frustration and pain about the world come out sideways instead of channeling it into solidarity and power and the strategy we need. And so I have a lot of big feelings about this moment, and that's okay. As long as I use them, I think to come together with other people and organize. But we do have to be nicer to each other. And a few years ago, I would have thought that was such a soft, lame thing to say.
Yeah, I find myself playing that role a lot as a movement elder now.
A movement elder.
It's just like, I was just at Brown and yesterday, and I built this beautiful sukkah, and all the universities have banned any.
Listen, the right doesn't have conversations like this. The right doesn't do things like this. I've been to CPAC twice. I've been to other conservative events too. The right doesn't do things like this. At right-leaning events, like, the speeches are basically like pep rallies for people to see their favorite influencer and get a picture of their favorite influencer, and then they go and drink. And then there's hookers and blow in the back that only certain people get invited to, but everyone knows is going on. And they give out swag and stuff like that. And it's all about presentation, and all the conservative ladies have their nicely tailored suits and their tits are all out. They all get their best push-up bra. They all got their hair did and all that stuff. And everyone has a certain look to them. And they don't do any of this, which is why they lose. Yeah, it's beauty pageant with booze, blow, and boobs. Exactly.
Anything like an encampment, but maybe it's a religious observance, a sukkah. It's a temporary structure. Of course, they've destroyed them, I believe, at Columbia and Northwestern, but Brown, it's still up, the Liberation Sukkah. And so we were,
really, it's still there,
bunch
Brown.
of us were sitting in there last
Maybe
night.
I should go see it.
And I said that, like, it was my final.
Brown is not far away from
my final message. It's just, I've just been really struck also that that a lot of people are, a lot that it's that for a lot of people, the movement is their family.
Hey,
now,
thanks,
right?
Casmar. I appreciate it.
And so,
Thank you. Guys, we still have a ways to go in this presentation. This presentation is going slow tonight, but are people learning things? That's really the important part. Thank you, Casmar, for the super chat. Guys, I do have $40 more to hit my super chat goal for tonight. If you appreciate me taking time out to teach you guys on a Wednesday evening, please feel free to send in a $5 super chat, $10 super chat. I'm completely funded by you. And if you can't do that, please make sure you mount the like button for me. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Let's keep going.
there's a particular
Hopefully
kind of
the Q&A
pain
will be good.
when that family doesn't have grace for one another. Thank you so much for sharing that, Astrid. It was so powerful, and it really made me think a lot about how we need to have crying parties. But
I'm feeling good today.
Seriously,
I feel
do
like I'm
think
on my
we
game
need.
today.
I had the opportunity recently to talk to the artist Anoni and the Johnsons, and Anoni sings about different kinds of grief and loss, and climate grief and transphobia and being a scapegoat, and she said something. She was talking about the death of the coral, and she said, we need ceremony fit for purpose, which is just like almost containers to sort of hold the enormity of the times we're living in. And we don't really have that. We don't have places where like really capable. So, I think when we don't have containers, ways to express this, it comes out in different ways. Like, yeah, okay, so you gave a benign story about the bull, but there's all kinds of other ways. And I also think that we need to, have space for legitimate rage, including at each other, right? It's not all just about nicey nice, because rage is one of the emotions that we are holding and contending with, and it's legitimate too. You asked about changing our views. I mean, what I have found, we are in, we're making these references
according to a very small subset of groypers that are unhinged fucking retards, I'm literally sexually harassing slime right now. Yeah, according to them. Yeah, of course, because I can't do anything without sexually harassing someone, apparently.
Universities and they're not, it's not
idiots.
funny, the repression that is going on against students and faculty and speech. And I do believe that this needs to be understood as a new McCarthyism. It's extremely serious. And
can we please have a new McCarthyism?
We're seeing a detonation of the entire,
like, for real though,
international humanitarian law architecture. I mean, a lot is going down in this moment.
1 in the chat if you would like to see a new McCarthyism, 2 in the chat if you think that's a bad idea.
But basic principles around academic freedom and speech in general, and the right to protest, they're all on the line. And so I have interrogated my own sort of, I think, casualness about some of these rights, and I don't want to get into a whole long, tedious debate about cancel culture, but I'm not willing to just shrug it off and say it never was a thing, because there has been a lot of canceling events and refusing to read texts and things where people don't meet a certain standard, and a use of language of sort of that someone's speech is an act of violence. Somebody is making us feel harmed, unsafe. And I think that there are situations where that language deserves to be used, but I think it's been overused. And I think there's been
Naomi Klein calling out SJW
I have been
bullshit.
silent in, when I've had my own questions around, should we really try to all organize to get the speaker canceled, or, not speaking on campus? I think when we're battling a very, very well-oiled, well-financed information machine when we're talking about Palestine, and I believe that these are winnable battles, but we need some clear messages on it. And I think that there's been a lot of mixed messages on speech, and that is making it harder for us to fight these attacks on the right to freedom of speech, because the left, frankly, I think hasn't defended speech, including speech that we disagree with. Yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to talk about this more openly, and yeah, I think that the information war is so unbalanced that it requires, like, even though we can all understand the nuances, I'm not sure that the debate can hold that much nuance. I think it needs to be a little bit clearer and accessible. And, that's where some of these sort of straight up pro free speech positions can come in pretty handy, even though they are often problematic. They're legible to a lot of people. And I think we need to think more about that when we're thinking about how we win. Is like, how many footnotes are there in our argument? And if there's too many, we might not win, because we're not going to have that space to lay it all out. And then people, if there's a sort of an obvious hypocrisy to point to, people will just use that as an excuse not to listen. I see that happening on a lot of different fronts. Yeah.
So I was thinking about this, just listening to Astra and Naomi, and for me, I've been wrong about a million things, but what I'm interested in is how these two things that Astra and Naomi are talking about overlap. Meaning that one of the things I'm very interested in is, how do we create a left culture that is open and capacious enough to include people who feel alienated, angry, and want things to change, and are confounded by what is on offer to do that. And part of that, I think, means creating a political culture that can talk about that. And I don't know. Maybe it happens in some place, it doesn't happen in others, but I think that for me, what that looks like is a tolerance for political disagreement and debate that can be contentious. I think that there is something about, I've been an activist, organizer type for, really since I was in high school. And one of the features of the left that I miss, actually, that doesn't maybe it exists somewhere here or there, but I was very active in the 2003 war, the U.S. war against Iraq, and we started organizing against that war before it began, shortly after the September 11th attacks in 2001. And then organizing meant that you put up flyers all over the city, that you sat in rooms that were much bigger than this one, and that you argued and you debated with people. And, and it wasn't a big friendship circle, at all. These were very heated, contentious political arguments and debates. And then we took votes on things, and that determined that determined what we did. But there was something about having to be in a room together, that being physically present with people, and voting, that you had to actually argue for the sake of convincing people about something, that you had to actually try to persuade the room in order to move from point A to point B. And so it's not to romanticize that, because, you know, life doesn't stand still, the world doesn't stand still, and things change. But that there is something about our political culture now that has made it difficult to communicate effectively with each other, that I think is a hindrance, not just for the people who are in the Zoom space or wherever they may be, but also in terms of getting larger. And I think that has shrunk our horizons and sense of what needs to happen, meaning we have to build mass movements. We have to build mass movements, not movements of the already committed, not movements of my friends, not movements of the people who already...
Hang on, this is a good question from Rationalist. At this point, do you feel that Twitter is even a good medium of conversation? Nope. I feel like all it causes is infighting and smear campaigns I've never seen. So, okay, so here is what I do think Twitter is good for. There are a lot of people on Twitter who are legitimately just looking for good information. Twitter can be a great way to reach a mass number of people. I can get far more views on a video on Twitter than I can on YouTube. And maybe the watch rate on those views isn't as high, but because there's so many more, like a large percentage of those people aren't going to watch very much of the video, but just because of the numbers game, if I can get tens of thousands of views on a video on Twitter and I can only get 1,000 on YouTube, that's still going to lead to like a disproportionately like higher number of people watching the damn video, right? I also think it's just Twitter is just the place that you have to be. It's where the conversation is, for better or worse. And I hate Twitter. I genuinely hate it. I wish I could quit it. I wish I never had to use it again. But it is where the conversation is. And it is where you can make connections with people. And it is where, because unlike what the small handful of groypers seem to think, it's not actually sexual harassment to send people DMs, and most of the time when you send people DMs on Twitter, it doesn't actually blow up in a big fucking public spectacle because most people are adults and they realize that it's not fucking sexual harassment. And so it's like, it is a great way to make connections. I've absolutely had tons of good conversations in DMs. I've made friends on Twitter. And so there is a lot of value to it, but you really do have to block out all of the bullshit, and there is a lot of bullshit. And it's a shame, and I wish it didn't have to be that way, and I wish people actually acted like adults, but most people just want to be unhinged retards, and you know what? They're allowed to be unhinged retards, but it just leads to a lot of insanity that doesn't need to happen, and it's really counterproductive. But you know, it is what it is. We have to work with the tools that we have, and we have to be able to engage with this in a way that is productive and a way that leads us to the goals that we're trying to achieve. You know, you just have to be realistic about what it is and what it isn't. And for me, it's like, this is part of why I'm saying, like, there are just certain things on Twitter that I will not be doing moving forward because it is not leading to any of my goals. It's just creating a goddamn headache. There are just people that I just don't want to interact with. And I can't. And so I'm trying to use the tools strategically in a way that can help me while also being very realistic about the things that I have a boundary and I will not deal with.
Already agree. In order to actually have the political weight power and authority to force whomever it is in power, Trump, Harris, whoever it is. Because Trump may lose, Harris may win, but has conceded so much and has conducted this.
Well, you've been under the spotlight for some years now, so I imagine you've gotten better at dealing with that online harassment. It's a really fucked up thing, isn't it, to say, I've gotten used to being harassed online. Isn't that fucked up? It's an even more fucked up thing to say, I've gotten very used to being harassed online by people who claim to be on my side. It's an even more fucked up thing to say, I've gotten used to being harassed online by people who claim to have the same goals as I do. I never have to deal with harassment from the left. I really don't. I fly under the radar with the left pretty expertly. Like, a lot of them, they do know about me. Like, the socialist activists, they know about me. They absolutely know about me. But they don't really pay attention to me. They don't interact with me. They don't actually give me a hard time. Even when I'm giving them grief on Twitter, they basically just block me, and then I go and follow them on one of my alt accounts, and then I can still see everything they're saying. But like they don't, like, the left doesn't harass me. It's people who claim to be on my own team. And so I've certainly gotten very used to it. And I think I've gotten better at managing it in that I just don't engage with it. As every once in a while I'll engage with it just for fun, because it can be fun sometimes, because they're so stupid. But if I'm honest about it, things would be so much easier if I didn't have to deal with it. Things would be so much better. And that's really, again, it's like the realization I came to over the past, like, I guess 24 hours, 48 hours, like, whatever. It's like, I would have so much more peace in my life if I didn't have to deal with this. I would have so much more energy if I didn't have to deal with this. So do you ever really get used to it? I mean, I don't know. In some ways, yes. In some ways, no.
This campaign on the terms of the right, that who the hell even knows what that will mean for us. Losing by winning. And so if we don't actually have a mass movement that can force whomever is in power to concede to what people actually want. One of the crazy things when I was writing about this campaign, and it's an article.
For Hammer and Hope.
Why is this race so close? And if you look at the polls, like, most people in this country think that the government should be involved in making sure everyone has health care. Most people want the government to spend. Most people are actually for big, active government, making people's lives better. They learned something from the role of the state in the pandemic. And if you're for that, there's no actual representation of that in that is on offer.
Jaxie says, what are some good resources to find more leftist content? That's a really great question, Jaxie. No one's ever actually asked me that. So the best place to start, if you want to find leftist content, is go to the YouTube pages of the big socialist book publishers. Haymarket Books has a massive back catalog of content. Just go to their YouTube page. Go to Pluto Press. Go to Veriso Books. You can also go to the different parties. You can go to the Party of Socialism and Liberation. You can go to the Revolutionary Communists of America. You can, and after a while, you can go to Red May. Red May is a group of revolutionary socialists out of Seattle. Red May has a massive back catalog. After a while, you learn to, so oftentimes, if I'm looking for a specific topic, I'll search based on the activists that I know are covering that topic. You start to learn the organizations involved. Again, like, socialists are really big on books. They make a lot of their money from book publishing. So the book publishers, the bookstores, the radical revolutionary socialist bookstores. There are revolutionary socialist bookstores in every city in this country. Then they're called radical bookstores, and so just look them up in any city that's close to you. You can go right in and look around and see what's what, and you can get flyers and things like that. Those are all really good places to start. If you just do those things, you will have literally years worth of content to sift through. So that's a good place to start.
In this electoral process. And so in order to get those who are in power to respond to what it is that most people actually want, most people have to be organized. Yeah. And it feels like we are so far behind on doing that.
They
and
always think they're losing.
November 6th, we're going to be there. We just saw this with with Biden, how the energy that was generated through the historically large protest in the summer of 2020 was channeled essentially into Biden's 2020 election and then the Georgia Senate races in December. And it was dissipated. And there actually were no protests, even as Biden was abandoning the promises that were made in 2020. No protest. It was only the Palestine protest.
Palestine has taken over everything.
That broke through the malaise. And so that just means that our social forces, like the sentiment is there. I believe. I think all the excitement when Kamala Harris first declared her candidacy that was expressed in tens of thousands of people getting on these ridiculous phone calls and showing up to the stadiums.
For Harris.
People wanted to do something. To me, this was an expression of a sentiment of wanting to be organized and wanting to do something. And we have a left in this country that I certainly see myself as a part of, that has not been up to the challenge of organizing that. And that's the challenge we face. That's what we have to do. If we want to actually build beyond ourselves.
White dudes for Harris. Called out.
Wow, that was bars, as the young folks say. So I'm gonna add this one more question I think we have to deal with at least briefly, and then I would like to open it up and see what comes into our Q&A. But
yeah, let's do Q&A.
Just because of the sort of experiences that we have
Q&A
here,
is the best.
There's a tendency to sometimes
session, guys.
feel like
Thanks for hanging in.
We're starting from scratch with this, right? What are we going to do? What is to be done, right? But the truth is actually that, the work I've learned from, my college, one of the things I really appreciate about the work of everybody who's sitting here with me is that constantly in their work, while offering really insightful and, fierce critiques of the status quo, they also pointing out those moments that this is not all doom and gloom. There are movements that have had victories.
Hang on. Great question, Jaxie. Which do you think is worse, the radical leftists or the liberal neocons? I think that the conservative right is the worst obstacle that I deal with in the world, because the thing of it is the conservative right and all of their bullshit and all of their propagandizing and all of their nonsense is allowing the left to win. So I can't judge the left for running roughshod over everyone because they're being allowed to be honest. And there is no opposition to them. And quite frankly, if we had no opposition to what we were doing, we would be running roughshod too. Sadly, the conservative right is our biggest fucking opposition. The conservative establishment is our biggest opposition to defeating the left. And so, does the left fundamentally pose the greatest threat? Oh yeah, but we can't get at them until we deal with the conservative establishment. And this is why I'm so supportive of Nick Fuentes. And listen, no matter how I feel about the very minority of gripers who are being fucking retards, I unequivocally support Nick because Nick is actually in a position to maybe shift the needle on the fecklessness of the conservative right. And that is the biggest problem. That is the biggest problem that I have. And I think that is the biggest challenge that we're facing right now. And it's because I want to defeat the left that I say that that's the biggest problem. Thank you for the question.
And then even there are inspiring things we can learn and practical things we can learn even when there's something that we don't want to narrate as a victory. So, Astra, just looking at the work with Debt Collective, for example. I mean, I watched that work through multiple administrations, right? Bringing in people who were sort of, we don't like the term unorganized. We're not condescending to people like that, but you know what I'm saying? Like bringing people who didn't have these kinds of experiences of organizing in across ethnicity, across all these differences. And keeping this movement alive and engaging with the electoral realm. Naomi, I remember you talking about, pointing our attention to things that were going on in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, and some of the things people were doing, these sort of, things that were on the table that people were forging, different visions. And of course, Kianga, I mean, I know so much, probably everybody in this room is a student of your work on different parts of the Black liberation struggle. And so I just want to invite you all to weigh in, again, I want to invite our audience in a little bit, but what are some lessons we can learn about when we're thinking beyond the ballot, when we're thinking about what it means to nurture and build a movement, right? Between, across these elections, set the revolutionary horizon stronger, what are some lessons you've learned from those experiences?
Okay, me. I think the question picks up really well where Kianga left off, which is, okay, we agree, it feels like that we need to get fucking organized at scale to build the power. We want to transform our political conditions. And I think one tension is just one of time scales, right? The urgency of the now, the urgency of a genocide, the urgency of the climate crisis. And we have to be responsive in that. But we do actually have to think really long term. I think beyond the next administration, like a decades long, maybe generational long political transformation. Like, what does it really fucking take to move these entrenched power structures? Last night, I did an event where I moderated a conversation with Chris Smalls, who helped start up the Amazon labor union, right? They have not taken down and nationalized Amazon, but they did do something tremendous. They unionized the JFK 8 Staten Island warehouse, right? They were out there in a tent, outside the warehouse for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of days. My friends who made a film called Union that's just opening filmed for 300 of those days. Not every day they were out there. And they were out there talking to coworkers, being kind and welcoming, right? Again, this isn't just about being nice. Niceness is a strategy on some level. We do need to, it's also strategic to debate and have conflict and know how to have that, but it is also strategic to say, hey, how was your day? Or I remember it's your birthday. This is what they would do out there, was celebrate folks, give them a bit of a feeling of emotional connection. And that's what it takes to unionize one warehouse. And they're lucky that they pulled it off. So I think we just really have to be serious about what kind of, what Ella Baker called spade work, like what that day-to-day work of organizing is. The Debt Collective is an experimental union of debtors, and our idea is, no one strategy is it. Nobody has the silver bullet. But we are very inspired by labor movement organizing, by organizing at the point of production. Labor density in this country is 10%. And a lot of us, because of how labor law is structured or because we're freelancers or whatever, do not have the chance to join a labor union. But we're still in this economy and we're probably indebted. As the Debt Collective says, you're not in debt because you live beyond your means, but because you're denied the means to live, because you don't have universal health care, you don't have free public education, because you're underpaid at the job. So guess what? You get robbed by your boss, and then you get robbed by creditors who you borrow from, right? So it is a short skip and a jump from feeling the pain of your student loans, your medical bills, your credit card debt, to being like, the state owes me more, right? And so that's kind of the big picture theory, is that within this movement, we can see different horizons. The horizons of the sort of immediate horizon of, well, let's get some debt canceled, and the longer term horizon of, let's build a society with reparative public goods where people actually get the things that they deserve. When we started off, we're kind of have our origins in Occupy Wall Street. You know, when we decided to start with student debt. When we raised the demand, cancel student debt, free college, Reuters, NPR, we keep all the clips, said, can you believe these idiots at Occupy? They think the government's going to cancel student debt. And guess what? They want free college too, right? We were mocked. And by the end of the Obama administration, we had launched the world's first student debt strike, organizing with students from a predatory for-profit college. And we had created such a crisis that the Obama administration was starting to cancel debts for people who had gone to this predatory college, Corinthian. And we had to use every kind of power at our disposal. We did what we call economic disobedience. We cannot pay these debts, we won't pay. But we also looked at political power, and we got a bunch of attorneys general to sign on and support the cause. We tried to shift the narrative by engaging with media. We weren't doing podcasts at the time. It was like 2014, you know, but we did other things. Legal power. What were the rights people actually fucking had? So we looked and we found this obscure provision from a reauthorization of the Higher Education Act from the 90s. And we're like, wow, hold on, they're legally entitled to relief. So, you know, we have to be, I'm just saying, like, leverage comes in all of these different forms, and we have to be, you know, improvisational, and when we're trying to figure out what power we possess. You know, when the Trump administration hit, we hit a wall. It was a really tough time because we're unique in that, I mean, I think our campaign at that point was uniquely focused on the federal government because student loans are held overwhelmingly by the federal government. We did manage to force Betsy DeVos to do one tranche of debt relief, and she signed the papers with extreme displeasure. Betsy DeVos was Trump's Secretary of Education. In 2022, our demand was finally met, and the Biden administration canceled $6 billion of debt for 640,000 Corinthian students, which was the original demand of our strike. And we had, at that point, pushed the administration to make this bolder promise of,
I just want to point
debt
this
cancellation.
out.
And so my point is...
So everyone thinks that all of this student debt stuff came from the Democratic Party, right? It didn't come from the Democratic Party. It came from the radical revolutionary left. This is where it came from. This again is one of the lies that conservatives tell people. They say that all of this stuff comes from the Democratic Party. It doesn't. It's not Democrats who are organizing this. It's the radical revolutionary left. And that's true of like every single issue.
Is that, you know, I guess because we're thinking about the election, is that, you know, the political terrain for us, it did really matter whether there was a Democratic administration or a Republican administration. But that ultimately, you know, ultimately our leverage came in a lot of different forms, and it's about being organized enough to try to access those. And I think having that longer horizon, well, what are we building power for? It's not just for this, you know, crumb of debt relief, but ultimately because we're trying to get people organized around their shared collective interests. We're trying to get people to see themselves and each other differently. And this work has been personally really humbling for me. Like, I find it a lot easier to write books than to be part of a movement and to do this stuff day after day.
Yeah,
I mean,
me too.
We really,
that's going to be another one of my strategies writing forward, books.
It is something that is very demanding, and more people need to do it. And there's, you know, plenty of rewards and great parts that come along with organizing, but it's no fucking joke. Like, our organizing director, Julia, is actually back there. The work of holding people together is real work. It's really important work. And it is a skill I think more of us really need to cultivate.
I'll just
Yeah.
say,
well, not right.
quickly
Well,
that-
really radical right.
yeah,
We need to start our own fascism bookstore. Can you imagine? Can we start a fascist bookstore? What books would be in the fascist bookstore? See, if I hadn't blocked Mio on Twitter because he's an asshole, like he actually had a great list of maybe I can still find, maybe, you know what? I think Mio once sent me his list of fascist books in my DMs, and so they're probably still there. And I can go back and steal Mio's list of fascist books, and we can start our own fascist bookstore. We can do a pop-up fascist bookstore on the Boston Common. That would actually be hilarious. Of also a fascist coffee shop. We could do the whole coffee shop in all like it can have like well, I don't like Nazi is a little bit too on the nose, but I'm not gonna put a swastika up or anything. That's too far. That's going too far. I'm not advocating for that. Nazis are bad. Hitler is bad. It's the worst idea in the history of the world. No less than 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. All that's bad. That would be too far. We'd be going too far. But I'm just saying, like, decorate it with like a very structured, some might say Hugo Boss-esque look, and like dress the baristas up in Hugo Boss. And we could do a bookstore combined with a coffee shop. It can be a coffee shop and a bookstore. Really, the possibilities are endless.
Organizing looks like going somewhere several hundred days, you know. But sometimes, you know, things happen very quickly. And, you know, I remember whether it was the kind of first iteration with Black Lives Matter in 2014, where things, you know, it felt like months were happening in a matter of days. And I think there was the same effect in 2020, where things were happening very rapidly and quickly, so much so that I spent all of 2021 thinking it was 2020. And so, you know, that's real. To say that there's no kind of set formula or pattern. There are long-term struggles, there are short things that come up very quickly. I think the question is, how do we organize ourselves to deal with different kinds of situations as they arise? And then how do you get people to then see themselves as organizers wherever they are, where if you're a student, if you are at work, whatever your capacity is, where it's not just you go off to organize someone else or to go off to organize somewhere else. But how does one see, how do you organize right where you're at? And what kind of relationships are you building with people? And what is that connected to? And how do you expand that? And so there's different ways to think about it. The issue is, how do we plug in to connect with what is either happening or to, you know, be involved with something that is happening?
Yeah, I think I find myself really thinking about how we weave our movements together, and how we kind of tell a shared story where because you know, I think the work, there's so many incredible organizers on the stage, in this room. You know, I want to sort of acknowledge the sort of just the exhaustion of having, you know, I know that there are people here who have just been on the streets calling for ceasefire, for liberation, for Palestine and justice for more than a year now, have pulled off absolutely incredible actions, historic actions. And I feel, you know, I also want to acknowledge that there's like a fear, you know, I hear from Palestinian friends of mine that is just like, well, is it going to be another one of these mass movements that people move on from, right? Because that has happened, right, with other movements, including, the movement for Black Lives that Kanga has been talking about. It's not like movements never die, right? Like things happen, things change, and they inform the next movement, right? The Bernie campaign wouldn't have happened without Occupy. Occupy wouldn't have happened without the ultra globalization movement. And I think that the connections that are being made in the movement for Palestinian liberation are intensely informed by BLM, by indigenous rights organizing here. And there's a generation that understands what genocide is because they have learned about genocide here. And are connecting the dots in ways that their Holocaust education discouraged them from connecting those dots, right? But I think the precariousness is we are still in this weird sort of NGO structure, right? Of kind of like issue by issue. Even if we have a holistic analysis of capitalism, we don't have the container for it, right? And I'm sure there are people who are part of parties out in the room who feel like, well, what about this? Why aren't you talking about it? We're trying to do that, and more power to you. I don't want to be dismissive of it. I do think we have to be careful of sectarianism for the same reasons we've been talking about, because that can lead us to a road of just denunciation. And if you're not doing my particular thing, you're a complete sellout and a jerk. We've all heard that, right? But yeah, I find myself really thinking about, what, like this economic system is, like we've said it before, we've been saying it for years, it is at war with life on earth.
Capitalism is at war with life on earth.
The death toll is getting higher and higher and higher. And that
capitalism
is
a literal death
Petro,
machine. That's what they
Colombia says that he sees the future of the entire world's poor in Gaza, that this is about normalizing
Gaza is about
capitalism. And if we want to
capitalism.
Understand why the governments of the colonial and settler colonial states
Israel.
have lined up across party lines to defend
And the
Israel's
United
Iron
States.
Dome, it's because the Iron Dome is global. We're in one.
Ooh,
right?
That's interesting.
And
we're all in an Iron Dome now.
The real
Capitalism
challenge
is the Iron
what's
Dome.
the alternative to that? Like, what is the alternative? What is the society based on life, repair, right? Because we are in the rubble. We're not talking about a clean sheet. We are rebuilding in the rubble. And there's, more
The
people who are
literal
going to
Iron
be living
Dome.
on less land because we've made large parts of the planet uninhabitable, or some people have. And I think people are reaching towards those connections. I want to shout out the JVP crew who shut down Wall Street and said,
Jewish Voices for Peace. That's what that
and
means.
shouted, fun climate, not genocide, So like these connections are emerging in the streets, and people are making them, and it comes out of years of organizing, but it can't just be that flash in the pan, right? It can't just be spontaneous. We really need the glue that holds us together. And I also just want to shout out Hammer and Hope, because this is a great example of the kind of intellectual
Hammer and Hope
debate
is a communist
space
publication
that we need, where we work out ideas, right? And have something tangible. So yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. A couple things. One is I want to, speaking of which, I mentioned that Rutgers example yesterday. I just got to shout out my comrade, Sherry Wolf, who was one of the key organizers with Rutgers is there.
Oh, a key organizer with Rutgers University. Really? Comrade.
And I want to
Hello.
say, to Naomi's last point about, not sleeping, one of the things we're going to be talking about in the upcoming Hammer and Hope issue is this moment when SNCC, some members of SNCC made a turn on the issue of Palestine. And the thing that inspired it was that Ethel Minor,
good to see you two ladies,
who was the communications director, started a reading group. Kwame Ture said it was the reading group that changed it, because they read, first they read Herzl and Ben Gurion, then they read anti-Zionist Jewish authors making the case and Palestinian authors. And he said when they got to the readings about South Africa and the relationship between Israel and South Africa, Stokely Carmichael said it was, Kwame Ture said it was, he said it was quite a shock because before that he had been sort of championing Zionism. So it was the reading group. They met once a week, and once a month, and they discussed readings. And this led to a profound shift in the Black Power movement. So just want to say that. Haymarket, you know what I'm saying? We got the book table, study groups, come on, y'all. Hammer and Hope coming out, you know what I mean?
Restart the reading group is what we need to do.
But I'm gonna gather a few questions here together.
Yeah,
one question that we've
Q&A.
kind of already been talking about, and I'm sorry I won't get to all these questions, but I'm gonna keep all these questions and think about ways that we might address them. One question is this. I'm gonna read two questions that are sort of in the same ballpark. Can you speak to the way Palestine has shaped this moment for the left? How does imperialism and international solidarity shape our tasks?
That's a good
That's
question.
one question. And here's a related one. Can the panel speak to the emerging awareness of colonialism and neo-colonialism in this moment? Because it strikes me that the struggle in the U.S. today is about a skewed understanding of world history, current systems of power, etc. So,
all words,
those two things seem linked.
Again, for people who might be new, imperialism is considered to be the highest form of capitalism according to Lenin. Colonialism or colonization is kind of like under imperialism. Those are also references to capitalism. Imperialism, colonization, and colonialism all essentially mean the same thing, but to varying degrees. But for our purposes, they mean the same thing. It means stealing the land from the indigenous people and privatizing it under the oppressive force of capitalism. Okay? And so prior to the land being stolen from the indigenous people, it was by the collective. Cider! You're still alive. Have you graduated from school yet, Cider? How far are you away from from being done high school? We need you in the world, Cider. I hope you're doing well. Anyway, so prior to imperialism, colonization, or colonialism, the land was under the caretakership of the indigenous people. It wasn't owned by the indigenous people, but it was under the caretakership. 7 more months and cider is free. You're almost there, bro. You're almost there. We're cheering you on. And so the evil capitalist, imperialist colonizers, they came in and they stole the land from the indigenous people and privatized it under capitalism. What's neo-colonialism? It's just colonialism. It's just it's all the same thing. It all basically means the same thing. There really aren't any nuances that are specific or not that honestly matter. And so just think of it as like it's like imperialists, capitalists, colonists. Imperialists, colonists. They all mean the same. They all mean capitalist essentially. That's what we care about anyway. And then decolonization means removing the oppressive force of capitalism. We can't forget you, Cider.
Anything that folks want to say, and I'm going to address one other trend of questions on those issues, but thanks, folks.
I'll just say that one thing about the Palestine movement that I think is really important that, may get overlooked because of the relentlessness of the Israeli state is what...
Wait. Cider, I have a question. I have an important question. Cider, are you a groyper? If you're not, that's okay. I don't have any personal investment. I'm just curious about whether or not that's the direction you went in.
A breakthrough the movement has had in changing public consciousness and understanding.
Wouldn't that be funny if Cider became a groyper?
And that, I don't think that...
He's all grown up.
I don't think that should be taken lightly. I mean, I started organizing around Palestine in earnest, really, in 2001. And the level of participation and support that we see, today is just not on the same scale. And I think that the kind of repressive response of the American state, of the
all right. He's not a groyper yet.
Administrative bodies on various campuses, of all of that has really distorted what can be found in successive polls that look at what the general public of this country in particular think about it. The U.S.'s role in financing and arming the state of Israel is deeply unpopular.
Yup.
The people, there are majorities that want.
This is that uncomfortable time where some of us agree with the left, and it's okay to agree with the left. That doesn't make you a leftist. But on this specific issue, I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable if you're like, yeah, I kind of agree with the leftist. Like, that doesn't make you a leftist. It doesn't make you a socialist. It just means that a broken clock is right twice a day. And every once in a while, they get something right, okay?
An end to the U.S. involvement. They want an end to Israel's siege. They want an end to what is happening. And that idea is both, I think, a product of the kind of endless, dedicated activism around this political issue, and that
cider might actually be a graper.
It's distorted because it's out of sync with the political class, with the mainstream media. And so it makes it feel like our movement is marginalized. It makes it feel like, oh, we're the lunatics who are talking about Palestine. When in fact, the movement has transformed public opinion around this issue. And so I think that the problem with not seeing that is that then sometimes we feel like a small, embattled, marginalized movement, instead of a movement that actually has massive support, and that has actually transformed how ordinary people view this across the country. So I think it's an important thing to take stock of.
10 more minutes, guys.
I mean,
We're
I
almost
guess
done.
I agree. I don't know. My thought is, I guess I would like to see our conception of internationalism not like, it does need to be out of focus. That's the whole point of it. But to actually see how it impacts people here as well, because I am kind of the conviction that tapping into self-interest is a good thing for organizing, and it's part of what motivates people, which is, part of why I thought that JVP action was so powerful, Naomi, to be at Wall Street and to say, fund climate, right? Not genocide. Debt Collective had an action in May that was called Fund Education, Not Genocide. And we went to Washington, D.C. and did civil disobedience at the Capitol, calling for debt relief and free education, and trying to, partly to show that there actually are real connections here, right? When we talk about sending money for arms to Israel, that's real, right? That's not just a talking point. And I think there is something powerful about making those connections,
Thanks,
more visible
Teresa.
to people as we organize with them, and to get people to think about the provocation from Coretta Scott King, who said, we haven't yet taken seriously the challenge of a peacetime economy, right? Like that is, what would it be like to have a society where the welfare state and the warfare state were not so interlinked, to build a society really based on peace? Because I think, to me, that's what a peace movement would actually be about. It wouldn't just be the absence of violence, the absence of killing, but the presence of all the things we need to sustain life. And I feel like people, as you're saying, the polling is there, right? But we need to persuade people that we have, that we actually have power together to help create that different world.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna take this one question, and we're gonna, and then we're gonna sort of wrap up. How can the left in America bring more working class poor people in? With 62% of Americans consider working class, why does the demographic feel alienated by the left? I think that's really interesting. Similarly, here another question: how do we build cross-class solidarity with our middle and upper class loved ones who
Cross-class
I'm
solidarity.
having trouble reading here, but everything is terrible, etc. But these questions in general seem to be trying to think about how we bring more people into the movement. And I think it's a real question that connects earlier to what we were saying too. Like, how do we organize with people who may
And
think
listen,
very differently about things?
Did you notice that question was like, how do we get our rich family members involved, essentially? How do we appeal to our middle and upper class loved ones? And inherent to that, they all view themselves as lower class. They all view themselves as oppressed. Now, these are all college professors. And they view themselves as oppressed. They view themselves as the worker class, the proletarian class. And so I just want people to think about that. And listen, there are a lot of socialists that do like blue collar jobs. There are a lot of socialists that are like baristas and construction workers and waiters and, garbage men and things like that. And no shade on the blue collar workers. I like, all jobs are valuable and all that stuff. I'm just pointing out there are legitimately a lot of socialists that are legitimately like in these very blue collar jobs, right? There are also socialists that are not in blue collar jobs, that are in white collar jobs, but they perceive themselves to be the worker class. Does everyone understand that? So whether or not they are actually in the worker class, whether or not they actually ever even do manual labor or lift a finger in their damn lives, they perceive themselves to be part of the worker class. They perceive themselves to be oppressed by capitalism. And so if you perceive yourself in a certain way, it doesn't actually matter if that's true or not, because your perception of it is what you're going to act on. Does that make sense? Let me say this another way. If you perceive yourself to be ugly, you might have issues with confidence. If you don't perceive yourself to be ugly, if you perceive yourself to be beautiful, you are not going to have as many issues with confidence as a person that perceives themselves to be ugly. How a person actually looks, like objectively, if there is such an objective thing, to be honest, because there is no such thing as an objective thing. Everyone is beautiful to someone. But how you perceive yourself, you could take the exact same person and you could take twins, identical twins. They look exactly the same. One of those twins perceives themselves to be ugly. One of those twins perceives themselves to be beautiful. Their inner confidence is going to depend entirely on their perception. It doesn't matter what reality is. It doesn't matter if they're both a 10 out of 10 if they put their picture up on the internet, or if it doesn't matter if they're a 5 out of 10 if they put their picture up on the internet. It doesn't matter. They perceive themselves to be something and they act as though that thing is true. And it is the same with socialists, right? These are not lower class people. These are fucking college professors. But they perceive themselves to be part of the worker class, and so they behave as though that's true.
So, to build that coercive power.
Yeah, so we need more entry points. I used to, I think about this a lot in 2014, 2015, 2020, around Black Lives Matter, is that we had massive mobilizations constantly, but very few entry points.
Thank you, Kenneth. I appreciate you.
If you wanted to do something more than just go to a protest, where do you go? How do you connect? How do you plug into things? And to me, that's related to what I spoke about earlier in terms of political culture, that we need meetings. We need meetings that bring people together to talk about the most important political issues of the day, to have opinions about them, to think about them, that aren't just, on college campuses, that, aren't just reserved for kinds of expertise, but that is really about developing a political culture. So, I think we need a shift in political culture, but that we also have to build organizations that have entry points that aren't just foundation funded NGO things with, the paid staffers and the professionalization of activism, And, it's not disparaging people who do that, but that's not a grassroots organization. That's not an organization in which everyone has a kind of democratic input and control over. And those are the kinds of organizations that we actually need to build, where people learn about how to organize themselves and to have ownership of the politics, and have ownership of the agenda, and have ownership of the organization itself. So there are lots of ways, I think, that break down this wall around politics, that's something that other people do, that's something that is a kind of professionnosed thing that the quote unquote or hashtag activists do. And so, those are at least some of the things that I think need to happen in the left's culture to open up the space for people to think about politics, to talk about politics, and then to act on them.
I was struck when Astor was talking earlier about, and Chandra, when you were talking about how incredible the Debt Collective has been in this period, even at times when a lot of organizations were really in a lull, including in the pandemic, right? And I was thinking about why that is. And I mean, I've been very involved in the climate justice movement, and I don't want to disparage it. I love that movement, and it's urgent, and I think we should all be really invested in its revitalization. But it's another one of those movements that had like a super mass moment in 2019. Massive strikes, millions of people around the world. Where is it now, right? And it hasn't done well weathering the intensifications of just the this sort of necropolitics that we're discussing. Don't use the word necropolitics if you want to reach mass numbers of people. I've been spending too much time at university. Speak in the vernacular, said Mike Davis. Anything that's worth saying is worth saying clearly. By the way, I'm new to the Academy. I've only been sort of doing this thing for a few years, and I really, truly am struck by the fact that there is a whole world of making simple things complicated. Like, it is wild. Like, it's like translation from things that we all understand to things that 10 people understand. And yeah, that should not be a thing. I'm all for funding education, but yeah. But back to the climate justice movement, I think that it hasn't been able to weather the daily blows of COVID, inflation, just the economic immiseration of this period, and the urgency of stopping a genocide. I mean, there are so many people. I went to the JVP retreat a few months ago, sort of staff and chapter leaders, a few hundred wonderful, incredible organizers, and the Venn diagram between that group of people and Sunrise was a circle. And so this is why we need that sort of meta story, because it's all important. And, we get into this mindset of like, okay, we're going to put that aside because there's an emergency over here. The emergency is rolling. We're in a rolling emergency. And so we need to be able to connect the dots. But I think from a climate perspective, if we want to be building a working class movement, it can't be abstract, right? And there's a way, sometimes we talk about part of the Climate and Community Institute. They do fantastic work, and they talk about fighting for climate policies that we can touch and feel, right? And I think the work that you do with the debt collectives, that is policy people can touch and feel. If you win, it materially improves people's lives. If you fight an eviction, it materially improves people's lives, right? And tenant unions have also been really resilient and growing in this same period. So I think from a climate perspective, we should be fighting for free transit. I think we'll have a working class movement if we're fighting for free transit. If we're fighting for lowering the rent and lowering the temperatures at the same time. It's not a mystery. Like it's really obvious. Actually, there are all kinds of policies that materially improve people's economic circumstances and lower carbon emissions. It's just they haven't been prioritized. So we have to prioritize them, or we're gonna just lose. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well,
and on that happy note,
Are we done?
but when you do that, I mean, you're weaving the movements together, but not just abstractly, concretely. So we want, to think about climate as a way of, lowering people's utility bills. People are getting gouged by private gas companies, right? I mean, the strategy starts coming into focus, I think, when you start trying to conceptualize things in that way. And to tie it to our earlier conversation, I think that the more these concrete goals actually give people a focus and help orient folks so that they can stick together during challenging times.
All right, this is basically over. We made it. It was a long one tonight. Congratulations to everyone who made it through the very end. This was much longer than I thought it was going to be. So I do appreciate everyone sticking around. I thought it was a good presentation to watch in terms of just like, we got a lot of good entry level stuff in on it. We got to teach people a lot of stuff tonight. I got some good clips, I think, so of just like teaching different things. So I'm happy about that. I really want to thank everyone who made it through the end of the stream. We will do this again tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And as a reminder, if you want to support the work I'm doing, the very best way to do so is by signing up for my Substack, which is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. The link is in the description below. And this is where you're going to find all of my breakdowns about what the left is doing. You're going to find video clips. You're going to find the Woke 101 series. You're going to find the Woke Mind series. Like, I've got all this stuff on here to help you understand what the left is doing. So if you ever have any questions, chances are I've probably written an article about it. I probably have a video clip. Head over to the Substack. Please, 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 please utilize the resources that I've created for you guys. Please utilize them. Please, please, please utilize them. Share them with your friends. Share them with your family. Use them to learn. All that good stuff. I really do appreciate it. If you appreciate the work I'm doing, please feel free to sign up for a membership. $80 a month, $80 a year. I am 100% completely funded by you. I cannot do this without you guys. So please make sure, if you appreciate the work I'm doing and you want to see it continue, please sign up to fund it. You can also head over to the merch store, which is unwokeart.com. That is also in the description below, where you're going to find lots of cool merch, including the Marxism is Evil yard sign, including our limited edition Halloween series. We got 4 limited edition anti-communist designs for Halloween on t-shirts, on sweatshirts, on pint glasses, on mugs, on stickers. You can head over to Unwoke Art if you want to see all those designs and all the different color options they come in and all of that good stuff. And that's it. That is it. That is it for the day. I will be back at 5 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, and we'll do it all again. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we will see you soon.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer. people dislike me because I am not completely like them.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.